Hey!
Welcome back, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? How you guys doing? How you gentlemen? How are you gentlemen here with me tonight?
I'm still riding that Stardust high. You know what I'm saying?
We're going to talk about it, but I messaged Mace this morning and I told him I was still vibrating from Saturday.
Yep, that's how I feel. Vibration is exactly the correct word. It was unbelievable. What a fun fucking time.
Well, there's no reason to delay this any longer. We might as well just jump right in. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Andy. We are Legends of Avantris. Of course, as always, these are, we're a little bit mature. We're not as mature here on YouTube as we are on Twitch, to be fair. We're not as spicy. But it bears noting that if you're here, you know, sometimes we can get a little heated and the conversation gets hot. But other than that, welcome. We're glad to bring you another episode of Neon Nights, an Avantris Talk Show. Excuse me. I apologize. We've got a few different ways that you can support us if you are inclined to do so. The first way is our merch shop. You're going to want to go over there and check it out because we got a lot of really great designs featuring your favorite campaigns and characters on tons of really awesome items. We're working on a couple more print runs of stuff that we want to do in the future, namely turning our Twitch emotes into stickers and getting the new Legends of Avantris logo set up on all of the places the old Legends of Avantris logo went on. So if you weren't aware, we went through a rebranding, and soon the old Legends of Avantris logo will no longer be available. So make sure you get that now while you can, and we're going to get on that. Next, we have our very first Kickstarter ever. It is called The Crooked Moon. It is a folk horror supplement for 5th edition, and we're very excited to bring it to you. We're looking to launch in early October. The single greatest thing that you can do right now is go to thecrookedmoon.com. That is thecrookedmoon.com. And go check out all of the really awesome stuff that we're offering. And basically become a VIP. If you decide to become a VIP today, you're basically reserving your spot on the Kickstarter. You're getting access to a VIP-only Discord server. You are going to have access to a Honk Legion digital mini expansion pack if you decide to then back us at any tier when we go live. And you have access to a Chuckles enamel pin, Chuckles the Clown, the one and only, an enamel pin that if you back us at any physical tier. More information about that to come. The VIPs are getting all of that information first. We've been dropping some really hot sneak peeks in the Discord. So if you are not a VIP, make sure you jump on that because you can only benefit. There's nowhere to go but up once you become a VIP, right? You're just sky's the limit.
And can I jump in here, Randy, real quick?
You may, absolutely, please.
So just to, because I know people are going to ask, we are now at 2567 VIPs.
Yeah.
And I promised in the VIP, which is 33 away from 2,600, which was our original goal, like in total. So this is amazing.
That's right.
And so I think I said that if we hit 2,600 by the end of Neon Nights, I will do a double reveal for today, because we already revealed this morning. Another reveal in the sneak peek of a concept art from a Boss miniature that I just got. It's gross. It's beautiful. It's amazing. We are so close to 2,600. So it's a lot. We may not hit it, but it's 33 away. So become a VIP, send it to your friends.
Yeah, so to kind of double up on what Mike is saying, our original goal when we started this whole journey was to get 2,600 VIPs over the course of like 2 months. And you all have absolutely helped us destroy that goal. So our next goal is to break 3K for the old Baba Haga reveal. And if you know, you know, and if you don't, I can't say anything more. So thank you all so much for your support and helping make our very first Kickstarter super special. Let's keep the ball rolling. We got to get those. We got to hit those milestones so we can get those reveals. And we appreciate all of you. Lastly, if you'd like to support us,
an hour later, or should we do it later?
Let's do it. Let's do it at the end. Let's do it. Let me just like rip through all this, and we can punch the trailer. It's Patreon. If you would like to become a patron, it's another really great way to support us because you get a lot of really awesome stuff in return. There's a couple of exclusive campaigns that you can only see over on Patreon. There's a vlog series that I've been doing as I drive to D&D multiple times a week, which has been really fun, and I hope you all enjoy it. I just posted an episode today. Of course, patrons of a certain tier, they get recognized on screen, which is right over here. I'm getting better at knowing which direction it is. We shout those out on Wednesdays when we stream, but they will be rotating on screen like they always do, and we could not do this without the continued support, month in and month out from our patrons. So we love you guys. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. If you haven't yet already, make sure you join our Discord. It's where we're always hanging out in between streams. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us and talk to us and show us all your cool stuff like fan art and enjoy all of the amazing stuff that the community has to offer. We've been building an amazing community for nearly 6 years now, and the Discord is where it all started. So make sure you jump on over there and check it out. For all of our socials, like our YouTube's right here, our Twitch, our TikTok, our podcast, make sure you go to Strodcast.com. That's Strodcast.com. And then, of course, tonight and during all episodes of Neon Nights, we're not doing Twist of Fate and Twist of Dread. Instead, for a $5 super chat, you can ask us a question about the topic at hand, which tonight is first-time DM survival guides. So if you are someone who is new to DMing or has never DM'd or even have been DMing for a long time and you want to ask us a question about that, we will read your question live. It's kind of like calling into a radio show. So we appreciate that and all of those things and all of your support, of course. As far as our upcoming schedule goes, all of our streamed campaigns take place over on our Twitch channel. You can tune in over there every Wednesday for Once Upon a Witchlight at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. The next chapter of Icebound is going to be September 8th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's a Friday. The second, I guess technically the third and fourth, we'll call it the second set of episodes of Stardust Rhapsody will be September 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So we got to talk about that, which was just unbelievable. And then, of course, Neon Nights is now on Mondays here on YouTube every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. For special announcements, we absolutely crushed the Bitsy goal. So at some point in the future, Derek's going to be cosplaying as Bitsy, which is going to be really, really great. If you become a member here on YouTube, you get access to a bunch of the really awesome emotes that we have on Twitch. And the more members that we get, the more emote slots we unlock. So we really appreciate that. And then the only other thing that I have to do is do the YouTube intro. And then we can maybe show the Crooked Moon trailer. What do you think?
Love it. All right.
All right.
Let her rip.
All right. Here we go.
Rip.
Welcome back to another episode of Neon Nights and Avantris Talk Show. We would absolutely love it if you would like this video, subscribe to our channel, and check that bell so you never miss an episode. Tonight's topic of discussion is First-Time DM Survival Guide. So be sure to leave a comment below. Let us know what you think about this new talk show and suggest future topics that you would love to hear about. Also, if you're looking to further support us, make sure you check out the Patreon, the merch shop, and go to thecrookedmoon.com today to become a VIP for our very first Kickstarter. So, gas up your Corvette, Tune in to your favorite synthwave station and cruise with us as we enjoy another one of these beautiful neon nights. Thank you, Derek. Yeah, that's it. Punch the trailer. Let it rip.
Oh. Somewhere lost in the shrouded realms of death lies a land of endless night, where long-forgotten horrors are revealed to those who travel through the mist. There, in a crooked house, lives a crooked man with a crooked grin who raises crooked arms to a crooked tree at the edge of midnight and hears the whispers of the old ones. They speak of a beast that stalks the darkest woods and darkest hearts, a crown of horns upon its head. If you lose your way and feel a warm breath that chills you to the bone, run. Follow the songs of harvest time, and before long you'll find revelry in the dancing shadows of blazing wicker. No matter your story, these lonesome misty rails will deliver you to where the hallowed cannot save you. Now's the time to brave the dark wood, beware the witching hour, and weave your own dreadful folktale underneath the crooked moon.
It's just so beautiful. There's nothing else I don't know how else to say.
I can't wait.
It's a beautiful thing.
Me personally,
I remember when we were first getting started and we were starting to put language together, and at some point I just read "Weave Your Own Folk Horror Tale," and I was like, "Who wrote this? This is amazing! That's unbelievable! Weave, of course, it's genius."
Weave your own dreadful folk
Dreadful
tale.
folk
Oh,
tale.
sorry. I read my own copy.
Before we dive in, one of the things that I forget to harp on enough, I don't harp on it enough when we talk about the Crooked Moon, is quite frankly one of all of our favorite things is the music that we've commissioned for the Crooked Moon. And we're going to talk about stretch goals and stuff like that later. But if any of you have seen Over the Garden Wall, and you are familiar with the soundtrack, the Blasting Company or the group that worked on that, we commissioned music from the Blasting Company. What timeline do we live in where that's a thing?
This one right now.
Thank God.
Just
it's this one.
unbelievable.
I know.
So-
Ooh, I love it.
So
I
we don't-
absolutely
we don't-
love it.
When you do this stuff every day, you start to become numb to it, and you realize that it becomes normal. But then I take a step back and I'm like, holy shit, the fact that we were able to commission the Blasting Company to make music for our Kickstarter is just unbelievable. So stay tuned for that. We appreciate all of your support. We couldn't do it without you. And without further ado, just as a reminder, if you want to ask questions, $5 super chat. I will make sure that when we have appropriate break times, we get to your questions, and we're going to be talking about first time DMing. We've got a couple of very seasoned DMs here, and then also just me and Rich, who are a couple of schlubs. But they were once
I can
first time. Yes, they were once first time DMs too, and I think that that's kind of the beauty of this whole episode is that we're going to really get to dive in and look at what it was like for them as fresh new baby DMs. But first, we have segment 1, which we always do as a recap. Disclaimer: there may be very light spoilers. Nothing that's going to spoil anything majorly. Just light spoilers. This is a talk show where we talk about behind the scenes stuff, where we analyze and we really get in there. So there may be some spoilers from time to time. It's nothing that's going to ruin your enjoyment of the campaigns or anything like that, but it's something to keep in mind. We played 2 sessions of D&D, technically 3, since last week. We had our normal Once Upon a Witchlight, and then we played the inaugural session of Stardust Rhapsody, which we are all just on cloud 9 about. As far as Witchlight goes, we had a very interesting kind of shift in tone and how things were going. And it was one of those things where, again, very similar to the TikTok that we recently put out, Once Upon a Witchlight, you didn't get very far physically. We didn't go very far physically, but a lot kind of happened, especially with how we left off in this woods where, we went to sleep and when we woke up, everything was different. This is obviously some sort of magical phase shifting wood, forest, right? We didn't physically move very far, but it feels like we're slowly unlocking new hints and secrets. What are everybody's thoughts about last week's episode of Witchlight?
I will go. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Rich.
I'll go just because I'm not going to
go.
talk a lot for the rest of the episode. But I think for me, the teasers that we've gotten from this new zone of Prismeer, it feels like John Q. Feywild, right? It's like a big forest. Wacky mushrooms live here. There are fairy circles. It's like all of the classic Feywild, like Celtic tropes of fairies seem to be present.
I didn't piece that together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I'm excited to get more flavor that we didn't get in however many sessions of Hither. Right? Hither? Or Thither?
Yes.
Hither. So Thither should be interesting, and we're making all sorts of horrible fey pacts, and I'm curious to see where it all goes. But I think that we handled it pretty well. I think we made the right deals, which maybe we wouldn't have done last year while we were playing the campaign. I think we've gotten better with dealing with Fae. So it was fun.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think that's very fair. I think we would not have made those deals, and now we just keep making deal and after deal after deal after deal after deal. And I think that we've basically, we've turned this into a mid-level marketing scam. Mm-hmm. And so multi-level.
What we need to do is we just need to find the circle. The circle is we made this deal to go do this, so that we could go do this, so that we could go do this. Eventually, there's going to be a deal that solves the first thing,
That's right.
And then they all just immediately are done. That's the big brain brew.
It's the last card in a game of solitaire.
Exactly.
I used to have a teacher in high school that basically said, if you're a real smart person, you basically just pay off all your credit cards with other credit cards. And you just keep getting yourself deeper into debt. And I'm like, wow, that sounds real smart.
I was going to say, that does not sound like sound financial advice.
They don't have kneecaps anymore.
This is not a financial advice stream. Do your own research. Do not take financial advice from a bunch of D&D, people who play D&D for a living.
I loved it. I will say that it was such an important lesson from Nikki because we had gone from a real freeform adventure in Hither to the downfall area, which was a little more linear. Still, you have some options left or right, to a much more linear experience in the dungeon. I mean, I know which door do you open first feels non-linear, but in reality, we were driving towards one specific thing. And this was an opportunity for Nikki to be like, hey, you're in a big forest that shifts and is crazy and is Feywild. Step back for a moment. You decide where to go next. You pick your own goals. And it felt really good to be like, don't forget, you have autonomy, you have agency in this world. Where are you headed? And I'm excited to see that rekindle.
Well said. Me too. Especially with the way that I don't want to call it. Is it reasonable to say that we ended an arc and this is the beginning of a new arc? Is that
1,000%? That's absolutely what happened.
Yep.
Okay. With the way that the first arc kind of ended, or at least the first arc that I've been involved in, it went very different than I imagined. To be honest with you, right? We all kind of knew that we had a couple different paths that we could take at the end of that arc, and the one that we chose was not necessarily the one that I thought was going to happen. So I'm very excited to see where we go from here, and I love Witchlight. I'm going to say it. There's no other way to say this. I love Witchlight.
Yeah.
So the other, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I can imagine we're I know that people have been saying that a lot of WotC modules and books in general have been getting lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter as they're just kind of stretching the content thin. And I feel like I could see how a lot of other groups could fucking rocket through this shit. I feel like you could have, from getting through the Witchlight Carnival and through Hither, I feel like there are some groups that could probably get through it in like 3 sessions.
Well, that, and it's a big testament to Nikki's ability to really add her own flair and add her own homebrew and really beef up these modules. Because we had somebody in chat one night say that their crew got through the entirety of the module in like less than 10 sessions.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I would believe that honestly after kind of seeing the general gist, but I'm very glad that we are over a year in and we just fucking got to thither. So
no, I think
now
that's great.
To be fair, those people who are doing it in 10 sessions, no wrong fun, but are they platinuming the carnival? Did they really go to every single ride, or did they go to the source of the thing so that they could solve the puzzle and then immediately get into the Feywild?
Probably. You're probably 110% correct, right?
yeah.
But again, like you said, no wrong fun, right? And we're doing this our way, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing, in my opinion, if I may.
Well, you know what's crazy is that I think we are right around the 1-year anniversary of Witchlight.
Yeah.
Where... That's right.
Yeah, Adult Man Goblin, the short, had its 1-year anniversary yesterday. And I think we got it out very shortly
that
after
means
we played
in
the
1
session.
week, it's a year since Chuckles.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
In 1 week from,
It has not felt like a year at all.
No.
This year
We should throw a birthday party.
This year has been so unbelievably action-packed. We might need to, you know what? That gives me an episode for a Neon Nights episode where we do like a year in review.
A retrospective, yeah.
Yeah, we'll do that. I'm gonna jot that. Somebody jot that.
Put
down.
that in the December batch.
Oh yeah, 2023 retrospective.
And so that means it's been a year.
That's brand.
We should really do like a retrospective of like the past year where I think how many YouTube subscribers did we have? 2,000?
We had like 1,900?
1,900 this time last year.
We'll do more than a year. We'll do like a year and a half.
Okay.
Because we were at 2,700 last Gen Con, I believe is what we said.
Yeah. So we would be closing in on 3,000 towards the end of the year.
I think it'd be reasonable to, when we do the year in review for 2023, we actually start like the last Gen Con 2022.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like that's like a big marker, a milestone beginning marker, I think. Anyway,
I'm writing this down.
Yeah, please do. We're getting off topic, but nothing's really ever off topic when I'm running the show, and this is our talk show, so we're going to do whatever the hell we want. But there is another absolutely mega new thing. Did we freezing a little? Okay, sorry.
Are we good?
I'm getting distracted. Can you guys see us? We good?
I saw a little bit of chop, but I'm still seeing you fine.
Okay, all right. Just as long as everybody can hear me.
Richie,
Sal,
I think fucked everything up. So
I mentioned off topic, and Sal is
as long as we're still live.
As long as we're still live.
I accidentally cut power to the table that we're at, and so it turned the TV up, but I think we're good.
No, we're good.
I don't know why. We're moving up and down. It's like a scream earthquake.
It's fine. It's fine. Anyway, Sal, that was very funny. I appreciated your joke. I saw it in the chat. The big thing on everybody's mind is Stardust Rhapsody. And holy hell, can I tell you, I'm not kidding. We posted the trailer, the opening sequence on YouTube. If you were not there on Saturday and you didn't have the beauty of getting to watch it twice in one day, then you can be like me, who, as soon as I saw that it was posted on YouTube today, watched it 15 times in a row. Because let me tell you, I retweeted it, I quote tweeted it, because I always have to quote tweet our stuff and give my own 2 cents, because I'm just an attention whore, and I wilt if I don't get enough attention, like a desperate dying flower. But that is to say, this was a monumental team effort between the artists, Dr. Cav, who worked on the art, Max Cruz, who we commissioned to write a song for our opening, to Richie's art directing and Mikey's vision and Derek putting all of this together. And Mike wrote the monologue, and I got to voice the monologue in the beginning. And then, of course, Mace's DMing, and everybody just coming together to make this an unbelievable start to a brand new campaign. I don't know how else to say it and this is me talking to you guys right now. I'm not just talking to the audience. When I watch that trailer and I get to hear myself do the intro, and then I see the characters fly across the screen, I'm like, I feel like Pike. Pike is 10 million times cooler than I'll ever be, but I get to feel like Pike, and it just makes my fucking month. Let me tell you.
You bought the fantasy, and you got the fantasy.
Yeah. Oh. We lost them for a second.
Sorry.
Sorry. So the stream's getting sleepy.
You're good. We talked a little bit about this, where Pike and Rhett are kind of like future redo versions of Avantris and Rodek, and I have wanted to be a bounty hunter in some capacity in D&D since the very first day we sat down and rolled our first dice, and it only took 6 years to get there, and that's okay. It was a beautiful process. But enough about me and my amazing character, and just quite frankly, God tier performance. What do all of you think about Stardust Rhapsody?
I went second last time, so I'll go first this time. I am in love, and the thing that pulled it all together, you're right, it's a team effort. Every player had to show up. The artists had to show up. The direction and everything the vision, all of that needed to show up. And I had good and high expectations for Mace because he had DM'd for us on a Silver Strand. He had DM'd for us our prologue session. He is an extremely intelligent player and is terrific at talking about how he's approaching dungeon mastering. I had expectations here, and I just felt like I was way off. Like I was just unbelievably off about how much he was going to bring to these sessions. I wanted it to be here, and it was just an order of magnitude more thoughtful and enjoyable and well DM'd. I could feel all of the prep work that he did, and I could feel him executing it flawlessly on the spot for 8 hours nonstop. That's a hard order, and it was fun. You could tell he was having fun. Everything we're going to talk about tonight about DMing,
Yeah, this is an episode I would have really liked to have Mace on for as well, but it was kind of short notice, so.
It was a masterclass. I'm so proud and grateful of him and to be at that table. It was just the best.
I agree. And it's one of those things where I always say this, that Mace is he's the best pupil. He's one of the best learners I think I've ever worked with. And it's one of those things where like I can talk to a lot of different people and like pass on wisdom and pass on thought. But like I've been consulting with Mace since he started DMing after our Shadow over Gauntmith. So since before the pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Early 2019?
Early 2019.
Mid-2019, yeah.
And one of the things that like was always amazing working with Mace is that like he gets it. And he's one of the few people where like he understands, even when he was like brand new, he understands narrative. And being a good DM, baseline that separates like the decent DMs from like the great DMs, the binary, is do you understand narrative? And Mace understands narrative. And if you go back and watch the VODs and you watch this, it's where, and we always talk about pacing, and Andy will probably talk about this later, but pacing is one of the hardest things for DMs. And without any of the players, meaning me, being like, oh, well, hey, Mace, why don't we do X, Y, and Z? Why don't we try to like pace this way and this? Without any kind of additional nudging or guidance, both of those sessions were timed and paced fucking perfectly. I think it's... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, before Rich jumps in, I wanted to literally just read the messages that I sent to Mace this morning, because it's very pertinent to your point. I said, bro, I'm still vibrating from Saturday. And he said, dude, I could not have asked for a better kickoff. And I literally said, they put the trailer on YouTube, and I've watched it 10 times. When the sax kicks in and we see our characters one by one, it's just so Elder God tier. I said, and your pacing was perfect for next month. The cliffhanger, all of it. So you and I are in 100% agreement that the pacing was Kino.
And as someone who has been kind of, teaching Mace everything that I've known for however many years as far as DMing, is kind of seeing like your student kind of spread their wings and fly and like just fucking own it. And like he did a great job in Silver Strand, but like where he was at Silver Strand, I had an amazing time and he did a great job from like leveling up. That's not like next level. He like fucking went and killed boars in Elwyn Forest for 5 years and got the Sword of Truth or whatever, the Sword of 1,000 Truth, and he fucking leveled up exponentially, order of magnitude. And so kind of it's that proud, the proud teacher feel that was really amazing. And obviously everything else, the twists and the turns. But, I think the pacing was probably the most monumental of just knowing how difficult it is to pace. I think was the most monumental effort or the success.
Well said. What about favorite moments? I know we do a little bit of Avantris and chill, but I want to talk about it again.
Oh yeah, Richie hasn't
gone
yet.
Please.
So I think that for me, right, and I'll just pull, this is the time to sort of pull back the veil a little bit. I will admit, and I admitted to the fellas, that I was nervous.
Oh yeah.
I literally couldn't sleep the night before.
Rich was sweating.
I got maybe like an hour of sleep.
He was shaking in his booties
that night, and it has nothing to do with the ability of anyone, right? But this was a very different, unique experience for a lot of reasons. It was our first brand new campaign launch in a year.
Since Witchlight?
In
a year.
And Witchlight was sort of like, just by the seat of our pants, let's just shit out some kind of fucking content so that we can keep streaming. And then everything sort of went cuckoo bananas after that. Two, right, like usually whenever we've launched a campaign, it's been the big thing we focused on, right? It's been our massive rock where all of our resources and attention is going to launching a new campaign. That was not true for this. This was basically like priority 2, right? Where when we first talked about this campaign, it was we really hadn't like made the decision of, hey, we're doing the Kickstarter, and so we had this huge list of stuff we wanted to get done for the launch, and then like we had to cut that list in half and like delay it a month just to be able to sort of make it happen with the Crooked Moon, and I was still nervous, even with everything that we had done, just to sort of get past the finish line. And to Derek's point, it blew me away. It absolutely, like, not just the vibe and the theme of the campaign that Mace executed, but also how everyone inhabited their characters. And, even compared to, we played an unstreamed session 0 around the table. And even from that was 2 months ago?
Yeah.
And it was still like a massive level up from everybody.
Yeah.
And
speaking of level up from everybody, I gotta shout out and thank and what's the word I'm looking for? Put the spotlight on the level up that we got from Casey and Arya.
Yes.
They both brought their A game and did an unbelievable job. Sweet character moments, really, really solid. I just thought it was the tits. I really felt like Dandy and Kavir were there. It was awesome.
Sorry, when I'm moving on to favorite moments, I didn't want you to think that I forgot about you, Rich, and I thought it was very funny that you were like, "Can I please go?" Because you're not going to get to talk for the rest of the whole episode.
Please, can I get a chance?
And I felt everything you were feeling, and it was not. Again, it's not a skill issue, right? It wasn't a confidence issue. It was we have had so many things on our plate, and we are only 7 people. And it has just been an absolute mad dash and went off without a hitch. Mike, go ahead.
I agree with everything that you said, and I think I should probably talk like towards the mic and not get like super comfortable here, right? I'm one of those guys that I'm a fidgeter and I can't get comfortable ever. Where I also think, Richie and I had a lot of all-day meetings with Mace on world building, on story structure, on mechanics, on all sorts of stuff, and I think that really that paid off in spades about all that shows the collaboration. But what I wanted to say is, if you ever, not to fluff ourselves up a little bit, but if you ever have any kind of doubt about the Avantris process, or you need proof in the pudding, go watch On a Silver Strand and those characters that were done very classic D&D campaign style.
Oh yeah, it was
where
just...
I didn't decide I was playing Chuckles until the morning of the session.
Yep.
And everything else, right?
Oh, I mean, when we did our session 0 for this, I was awful. I was egregiously bad, like offensively bad. So I get it.
But like on a Silver Strand, then to the characters, the story, the world, the setting, and everything else to what happened on Saturday, and just compare those and watch them back to back. It's a lot of time. That is the Avantris process at work. And to me, that was like proof in the pudding. Not that I ever had doubt, but like it was a reaffirmation and also the recommitment to me. If there is ever a time where I ever DM again and start a new campaign, it's that every single campaign that I run from now on will always follow this process, because this is the best feeling party. This is the best feeling party that we've had since Edge of Midnight. And that process of basically having every character be super collaborative, all reflect the theme of the campaign, all be like super woven together, Edge of Midnight and Stardust Rhapsody have effectively have like the same general principles, right? And so like that is the commitment to me, or like the reaffirmation to me of every campaign we launch going forward has to have that process.
Yeah. I 10,000% agree. It is essential. The collaborative process is proof to me that we now have like a Avantris party creation process that supersedes and expands and maps and talks to the character creation process.
I love that. All of that was very well said. The comments in chat while we were playing and now have just been so unbelievably over the top great. So I want to again just thank the fans and thank the people who watch and support us. And it's been a wild journey, and Stardust Rhapsody is special. You know, it just is. It's just special. Everything's special. All of our campaigns that we do are wonderful and amazing, and I love them all for their different reasons. But Stardust is special, and I'm very excited to see where it goes from here. Any other final thoughts on that before we move on?
Oh, we're gonna do favorite moments. I think we kind of cut it off there.
We absolutely can.
Let's do it.
I would love to.
Yeah,
talk
I feel
about
like we still need extra catharsis because we had a real quick Avantris and chill.
Yeah, we really.
I
always
still
hate
feel
doing
like
that.
I have the cathartic blue balls.
Let's do it. We get
Cathartic
this is our
blue
show.
balls
We do
right
whatever we
now.
want.
I need to really catharsis.
After you, gentlemen. If not, I got one.
My favorite. God, so many. I'm gonna take a couple. The first is. This isn't really the session itself, but just seeing all the art and working with Dr. Cav again is just an absolute pleasure, and feeling the characters match with the art. I can just picture everything beautifully in my head, and I can't wait for the full bodies of Kavir and Danny to be done. I can't wait for Hank's art to be done, and like
Chuckles' pants to be finished.
Chuckles' pants.
Oh,
will be
my
fully
pants
detailed.
are undone. Oh no.
Another is just, I love playing. So whatever Andy said earlier that Chloe quoted him on, I'm kind of like the opposite of that, right? Where
what?
like attention whore that withers without
Oh,
attention, right?
Oh yeah.
That's where you and I very much differ.
Andy and I are at the total opposite ends of the spectrum, right? And so for me, you know, I'm always happy to play the character that's not going to be like the fan favorite, that's not going to be the center of attention, that's not going to be like super goofy or wacky or like or silly. And I just love the sort of gruff dwarf archetype, and I already have one of those, and I get to play it again. But for me, combining that with, I also love playing high-int characters, and playing high-int. So this is my second high-int character, and I feel like I was playing him high-int, yet totally different from Clayton. And that's just absolute joy to inhabit, and a fun puzzle to kind of play with for fucking 10 hours straight. And so it was just an absolute joy to fully realize Rhett not as this random hippo man that had like a duster and a fucking pistol or whatever the fuck was going on. And like we said, to go through the Avantris process and to sort of really rein it all in. It was an absolute pleasure. And my final moment is the ending, where I wasn't sure how Mace was going to end it, but then he gave me special information because I'm sort of Rhett and the leader of the team, as I somehow always am. But I just like with the information that I omitted to them, and then I was gonna sort of set him up, but then he just took it and he did it himself and narrated exactly what I was thinking, and it was just this beautiful mind meld, and the way that he ended that session, like you couldn't write that. I could fucking see it animated fucking perfectly.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm so
Before
vibrating.
anybody else jumps in, I also wanted to say how creative Rhett is from the point of being a high-end character. It's very much like the... Oh, I'm going to pause right there and say, Bunny, thank you so much for the gifted
Thank you.
memberships. Thank you so much.
10 gifted
appreciate it.
memberships.
Good God.
Unbelievable. Legend.
Anyway, I was complimenting Rich on Rhett. He is a unique high-end character, very much like Clayton, that is unique, but even more so.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's this beautiful thing that you've done where you've created this character that if you look at him, you say, "Oh my God, he's a grease monkey," but then he's also fucking brilliant. And I love that juxtaposition of like what's on the outside doesn't necessarily immediately betray what the character's thinking and doing. And I also want to clarify that even though I may be an attention whore, I did not design Pike to be a fan favorite.
He's literally me.
He's kind of an asshole. Pike is kind of an asshole. It hasn't really come up yet. I think that people are going to see him and be like, "Oh, he's inspired by Spike Spiegel," and everybody loves Spike Spiegel. But if you watch the show, Spike is kind of a dick. And like he's not exactly the nicest person all the time. So he wasn't designed to be a fan favorite. And Rich and I had a very long conversation where we kind of thought that if we do our jobs right in Stardust Rhapsody, we will be the picture frame that holds this beautiful picture to kind of boost up LaBouche, Kavir, Dandy, and Chuckles, right? Where we are the straight men of kind of the Rhapsody, where we're, not the comic relief. We're not these, Dandy is so expressive and she's so lovable, and Kavir is this like kind of sassy, like, I just think that if we do our jobs right, we'll be helping present this campaign in a way where we're highlighting the other characters, not us so much.
Somebody cut this comment with Pike and Rhett falling backwards after trying to pull the cable out of the wall. No. I think
it's too anime.
I think that obviously no.
That felt
Framing
so
it that way
bebop
is
to me.
exactly right. Obviously, and to build on what you're saying, I'm really excited to play a character where I don't have mechanical tools to create jokes and try to express my character. I only have rage and I hit things hard, and I'm gonna have to figure out how to make LaBouche still feel three-dimensional. That opportunity excites me, and now seeing where things started with this campaign, I just feel like the wave is just starting to crest, and it's like we're all surfing Neon Night style.
I think that on your point, it's like, I think it's really funny that, I was saying to Rich, we're like, I feel like he's the only one who can like really sell the super high end characters.
Yeah.
And like have it be very believable. And I think that it's one of those things where every single campaign that we have, like you have to accept that you're always going to be the leader, because we're just a fearless leader in real life. He's our CEO. And I think that it's one of those things that we are just inevitably going to fall back on in all of our campaigns, and it just fucking works. The dynamic really works, and seeing it with Kremi, with Yornier's become effectively a leader, right? Without it being intentional. Kremi, Clayton, and Rhett, especially though, and I just think all of those dynamics are really funny. Not Briggsy though. Not Briggsy. Not Edge of Midnight. Yeah,
and that was very intentional.
There are absolutely room for other people to take that mantle, and I think it will happen. It just takes the right context. It takes the right context, right?
Yeah. But I just love the dynamic where I think I said this when we were hanging out after the session outside. I think we were hanging out until like fucking 3 a.m. outside our house.
Good times.
But
Yep.
like I felt that I had like played through like a 90s anime.
Yeah.
Like with the right amount of action and comedy and horror and it's like one of those tonal shifts of like one of the things like and obviously like a lot of like 80s 90s anime and kind of general sci-fi stuff of where it kind of runs this gamut of where it can be really horrifying but then also peaked with like funny moments and action moments. And the other favorite moment that I have is the space combat. Obviously there's a lot of feedback and there's a lot of things that like will tweak and change, but like the fact that I felt like I was fucking playing Star Fox. Like, and that to me is a success. Like, I was going into this like, do I get the fantasy of a tabletop of playing the free range, or all-terrain mode, whatever it's called, all-terrain mode, those of a Star Fox 64, Star Wolf is attacking, and I suddenly go off the rails
when you have the 3D.
And go into all-terrain mode. Do I feel like I played in that kind of scenario? It was absolute. Like I felt like we were all flying around, and
you had your B button to shoot your bomb. You had the C buttons where you could do the maneuvers and stuff.
Yeah,
like, it was so good.
So yeah, it was a huge success, especially given how I don't want to say not a priority it was, but how focused on Crook and Moon most of us have been.
Well, we just necessarily had to deprioritize a lot of it, to the point where we were calling our main ship the Ganymede up until 2 days before we played, and then someone had the suggestion it should be the Rhapsody.
That was me.
Yeah, Mike, it should be the Rhapsody. We're all like, yeah, it should. Let's fucking go.
And again, it's not to diminish it. It's just that there are only so many hours in the day, and we're only so many people.
Well, and I think, and for me, that's what really excites me about talking shop just a little bit, right? But like when it's just Mike and I right now being full-time, everybody else is trying to put in the time when they can. Like the more that we can do and the more we can get people focused on this stuff, I'm excited about all the cool fucking like if this is what we could pull off with these other huge priorities and everybody's trying to find extra hours in their day, like I'm just so excited for the future and like what else we can do. Right?
We're going to be pedal to the metal. We're going to be engaged full thrusters. Hank, engage all thrusters. It's going to be, we're going to be blasting off. Yeah.
Ceiling unlimited.
So if I had known that we could have talked about this for 3 hours, I would have forced Mace to come on and we would have just done a Stardust debrief. I'm kind of bummed I didn't think about it.
I think we should try to do that at some point, but yeah,
we'll plan. Let's plan it for maybe after next month. And then we got 4 episodes under our belt. Mace will have a better feel for what's going on, and we'll plan a full like Stardust debrief.
Should we play the intro?
We absolutely can, and we absolutely should.
Okay, I need to cut over and set it up, and then I'll cut back, and then we can cue it up and go. But it annoyingly won't let me do it unless I cut over.
No, that's fine. So how about while you're doing what you're doing, do you want me to just keep talking? Because I can do that.
Are we going to go
no,
I think we just sit in
cut over
silence
to
for the
the
next
scene.
60 seconds.
No,
meaning they won't hear us anymore because I have to physically cut over to resize.
Okay, so then let me just frame what's going on.
Yeah.
If you weren't able to tune in for Saturday and you haven't seen the opening that we're talking about, that I basically just teed this whole segment up for, we all worked together, and it was mainly Derek at the end of the day who put together this unbelievable opening intro. The goal was to make it feel like 80s and 90s Saturday morning cartoons, and to just have something that we could do where I think Icebound was the first one that had like a giga intro, and now most of our campaigns will forever. So well done on Derek. We're gonna cue it up.
I appreciate it, Andy. I just want to say Kels had the best compliment way of putting it, which is she felt like she was in her PJs and she was asking her mom for French toast on Saturday morning. And if you don't want a bowl of ice cream, a bowl of cereal or French toast or something like that when you watch this, then I haven't done my job.
And we're proud to announce our new sponsors, Magic Spoon. Not sponsored. Although we actually probably should reach out to them. Yeah.
Okay, so
we're gonna show the trailer. Just hang tight.
Hang tight.
Some say the universe is a song, that all things are made from the same stuff as the stars. and that every life is a note in the music of existence that echoes through infinity. So when you feel insignificant and alone, just remember, we're all irreplaceable parts of that grand cosmic melody, the Stardust Rhapsody.
Coming to Adult
Amazing.
Swim.
Look, yeah, I was literally just gonna say that. Sabrina's comment about it feels like 3 a.m. on Adult Swim doing their anime block. I totally agree. It's perfection. The comments that we have been receiving since Saturday have been just absolutely blow me away.
Makes me feel good. I did that in 1/5 the time that I did the Icebound intro, and I think it's superior. And so I'm really proud of it. And also, I need to thank Mikey and Rick for their phenomenal feedback as we went through the creative process.
It just means we're learning. Right?
Collaborative.
We're all learning. Awesome.
I also want to say my least favorite moment of Saturday
Oh yeah.
is that of all of the times that fucking LaBouche, spoilers, like went up and just jetted towards a fucking spaceship and went apeshit. The fact that not a single fucking time did I say, "It's a Gundam!" I am so angry at myself.
Yeah, that's
I kept thinking
No.
of it,
Speaking
and
of
then by
missed
the time it was
opportunities-
the time was appropriate.
There were like 14 times where I told myself I'm going to make a joke at Rhett about him having a talk boy on his belt, and I fucking fucked it up every single time.
Did it just not occur to you till afterwards, Mike?
No. I had it written down in my notes.
It occurred to me, and then by the time it came around, I had forgotten about it.
Yeah.
And then I thought of it again, and I'm like, oh. And then even when we were exploring we were doing our foot. It's like in Star Fox, we get out, and now we're on foot, right? Or we're in the foot missions now. It's I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll reference it. I should have said that, and then I completely forgot until this moment, and so I feel
There's
like
a lot going on.
It was such a fucking missed opportunity, and I'm so angry at myself.
there's always
It's
next
not
one.
like we're ever going to do space combat again, so that's gone forever.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So everyone here, pretend that I just didn't say that. Forget about this conversation and laugh when it finally
We'll
happens.
laugh. We promise we'll laugh.
Thank you.
All right, I think it's time to hop in. Any other final thoughts? Because otherwise we're hopping in.
I mean, I could literally talk about this all night.
I know, me too.
Let's save it, because I think that we could talk with Mace about like the process and our all-day meetings, and like there's a
Yes,
lot we could
please.
say about how it came to be that we should save for its own episode.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. So the reason everybody's here tonight, besides Stardust Rhapsody talk, is to talk about first-time DMing. And normally what we do when we talk about the Avantris process for certain things, right, is we always frame up that there's no wrong fun. This is simply a behind-the-scenes look, a glimpse behind the veil to see how we, as a group of 7 individuals, execute on a shared vision of Dungeons and Dragons. We hope that if everything doesn't apply to you, that there will be some pieces of information that you can kind of take with you back to your home game. Maybe you're somebody who's been DMing for decades. Maybe you're somebody who's never heard of Dungeons and Dragons until right now. Or maybe you're somewhere in between and you're just working up the courage to work on your first Dungeons and Dragons session or campaign. Then this is where you want to be. And we're hoping that we will give you advice that you will be able to use at home. At the end of the day, though, normally what we do is we go through our process and then we kind of talk about stories. What I wanted to start first with specifically are stories from Mike and Derek, where you guys are going to tell us what it was like the very first time that you ever DM'd. So take a minute, think about it hard. I want you to dig really deep. To go all the way back to the early 20 teens, and let's talk about what it was like to be a first-time DM for each of you, and the absolute terror. Or maybe there wasn't any fear because you didn't know what you were doing and you didn't know what there was to be afraid of. Walk us through your thought process and maybe some stories about the first time that you guys ever were dungeon masters.
I was scared shitless. It was December 13th. Is that when it was? December 13th. It was a Friday night. We got pizza.
We did.
We got pizza. I had little homemade tokens made out of cardboard, and there was an angry face on one side and a dead face with X eyes and their tongue out on the other side. And I had designed the whole first session to the only NPCs that they had to deal with were either enemies, and they were gnolls and kenku, so they were non-verbal, or
That's right.
or sick and injured NPCs that couldn't speak. Because I did not want to jump into actually role-playing as an NPC.
Yep.
And at the moment, for that first session, I still hadn't decided if I was in a first-person RP or if I was in the third person. And the fact that I was like still considering that on session 1 is like fucking wild to me. Absolutely wild. But it was one of those things where like it kind of all just felt, and I'm sure if I went back and could like have a time machine and go back and watch us play, I'm sure from my perspective now it would be awful D&D. But at the time, we were like, holy fuck, that was amazing, right?
Yep.
Like, we were like, holy fuck, we killed it. That was so fucking good. And so it's how
It's just too good.
It's just too good. And it was just one of those things where, like, I think that, like, at the time, it felt so natural. And it was one of those things where which it always makes me feel good is that basically, because all that matters is the reaffirmation. Right, so we're doing this professionally now, right? We're like, we're doing this as a living. I know we're not professionals, but we are now doing this professionally. But back then, all that mattered is we had pizza. We were all good friends. We were drinking whiskey, and we just had a damn fucking good time. We had a lot of fucking fun, and that's all that mattered. And that to me is like when I think back to that first day. Like, at the end of the day, everything else, all of these bells and whistles, all of you hundreds, thousands of people, like, that's amazing. But when it comes to actually DMing and enjoying a session, all that matters is that same fucking Friday night in December of 2015 of a bunch of friends sitting around eating pizza with rolling dice.
I'm going to say this one time, and I'm not going to say it again for the entirety of this episode, because otherwise I'll be saying it every 10 seconds. Those were just simpler times.
Yeah,
They were.
It was just simpler times.
And this is actually kind of blowing my mind right now, and I've never thought about this, but I know that, Mike, you said it before, where when we met our first NPC that could speak, it was Dobro. And because Nikki was so all in on Sylvie, and she was first person, that sort of swayed you in the moment to be like, I'm going into first person. And so thinking back, if Nikki had not been role-playing in the first person as Sylvie in 2015, would we be here today?
Possibly not.
Like I think it would have taken us a lot longer for all of us to come around to try it.
Yeah. Anyway, that's like one of those big string theory like universe split moments. Maybe
it's a canon event, or it's like a fork in the road where there's like a quantum moment, right?
Yeah, that was a major quantum moment for sure.
We need it's from the timeline split and the Mandela effect.
That's right.
Mancala effect.
The Mancala effect.
Somewhere there's another version of this channel in another universe where I don't exist. It's called Legends of Avantris.
That's right.
I mean, we already are Legends of Avantris, probably half of our fan base.
That's true. That's definitely
so.
crazy.
I mean, from a certain point of view, we already are, Derek.
Derek, tell us about your first time DMing.
Oh, my first time was a magical
I know
time.
you DM'd before. Being part of Avantris.
I'm going to consider my first time DMing as my first time DMing Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition.
I agree. I think that's the right way to look
because
at it.
I have a whole story about narrative dice-based games that I played with Warhammer 40,000 minis and Lego characters with friends. That was just shit we made up. And then I played Star Wars RPG, and I played whatever it would have been 2 at that point. It would have been before 3.
For what it's worth, everything that you're saying, you've talked about previously, you've told these stories. I do think it's relevant. I think it's interesting.
My first time doing a Dungeon Master thing where my friend said, "Hey, we would love for you to come out and we knew each other in theater in high school. You've got performance, you know board games, you would make a great DM. We love this thing called Critical Role." It was late 2015, and I know that because they were trying to get me to watch Critical Role, and they hadn't finished Arc 1 yet. And so I think it was November or December, I drove out, and I wasn't going to do a module. I was going to write my own story. I was going to write my own adventure. So I bought the 3 books. I had the Player's Handbook, I had the Monster Manual, I had the DMG, and I sat down and I read them to the best of my ability. And I sat down and I wrote some notes down. And while you were talking, Mikey, I think everyone noticed that I was looking at the sun. And it's because behind me actually is all of my shelves that I have in my office. And there's all of the amazing gifts that I've gotten from everyone. And somewhere over here, behind my head, there's all of my game design stuff. And I know somewhere in there, I wish I could find it right now, is a page where I drew the Wizard's Tower, the Mage's Tower, that started the very first adventure, because this is a great way to start a campaign moment was, you've all been sentenced to death, and you wake up in a jail cell because you didn't agree to death. You agreed to be transported to this mysterious mage who your life is in their hands. And so you're going to wake up in this jail cell. And just like you, Mikey, I was not confident enough to do verbal NPCs. So the jailer, his name was Tonk, and all he said was Tonk. Tonk, Tonk.
I remember you planning that session when we were talking on Slack at work.
We were already starting to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I had this whole thing that I was going to do about the desert. This is where the Mage's Tower is. I had some cool puzzles. I had some good combat. We had some natural 20s, and it was just exactly to what you were saying, Mikey. It was beer and pretzels, damn good time. I don't remember having much trepidation about it, but I should have. I was overly confident. I went in with much hubris. And so I remember we got about 20 minutes in, and one of the players said, "How do I make an attack roll?" And I was like, "Well, you roll a d20. And they're like, "What do I add to that?" And I was like, "What do you mean? You add you add stuff?" And then they were like, yeah. So we went to the player's handbook and we flipped to the thing like, "Oh, you add this." And then like, how do you add that? What do I add to damage? And I was like,
"Oh my
you
God.
you add strength to your damage too? That doesn't sound right." Like, if you're going to use strength to hit, why would it also... That's horseshit. And so we looked it up, and we did this whole thing.
Wow.
And it was simpler times. It was simpler times because the thing that I remember about it is that, all of the players at my table were already invested in active RP. They wanted to be Laura Bailey and Travis Willingham and Sam Riegel. They wanted to do that at the same table. I didn't know that, so I didn't know what expectations they had thrust upon me as a DM. And instead, I just came up with this simple little dungeon. And they played sort of grognard D&D, but filled it with their own stories, and it ended up being a very magical night. And I remember a lot of it was just, hey, well, let's look up the rules. Let's figure out how to play this game together, and that was okay, and it was fun. We had a fun fucking time.
Yeah.
That was my first time DMing ever.
I can't believe that your first NPC was a gonk droid.
That's amazing.
That's a huge reveal. Gonk,
That's
gonk.
Chad move. Honestly, absolute Chad move is gone.
And then I was like, I'm gonna do it this time. They met bandits in the second session around an oasis that they found because they had to journey over many days trying to survive. And they walked across a giant skeleton, dried up mud with monsters in it. They met some Thrycreen, and all they did was click and look at them funny. Or Thrycreen, try or Thry?
Thry.
I never.
What about the giant scorpions? Are you sure they weren't giant scorpions?
They walked past a dungeon. I had a whole dungeon planned.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
They didn't take the hook. They just looked at the
No.
entrance to a spooky dungeon, and I was like, it looks pretty spooky in there, Dungeons and Dragons heroes. And they were like, you know what? We need food and water. Let's leave.
I remember. It was crazy. Is that I remember
Oh
that
my
conversation
God.
vividly on Monday, the next Monday, where I'm like, Derek, you got to give them a reason. Like, why didn't they go into the fucking dungeon? And I'm like, well,
Because there's gonna be there's gonna be cool shit in there.
Derek, what was
Anyways.
the hook? And he was
Oh
like,
my God.
Nope.
it was a
Right past the
dungeon
hook.
in Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, Derek.
And then bandits showed
Amazing.
up at the Oasis, and they were like, "Hey, how are you?" And I was like, the bandit walks forward and fills his water skin, and looks at you, and he takes a drink, and he goes, roll for initiative.
Why do you
I
assume
lost
I'm a
it.
bandit?
I didn't get a single fucking word out. They just ambushed, and then it was combat. And I was like, "Oh, that was okay, right? That was fine." Nope. It was all beginner.
As long as I've known you, Derek, I have never heard this story.
I don't think that I've told you that, except for Mikey, who was living it with me.
Right.
Because I was listening to Mikey, and he was like, "Oh, I've got the coolest shit. There's going to be this fucking pumpkin, and there's going to be these fucking werewolves," and I was listening and being like, okay, yep."
Okay, right. Taking notes. Holy shit. I thought the segment would be good. This is absolutely floored me. This
My
is the
pleasure
greatest
to share.
thing.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you. We're going to dive into this a little bit later, I guess. But as far as those sessions goes, and maybe it speaks to itself, like what would you have, told like now your present self? What would you have told your past self in the hour before that session started? Like, hey, I only got I've got 10 minutes, and it's an hour before your session starts, and I'm Derek, or I'm Mikey from the future. What would you have told your
All of a
previous
sudden,
self?
Derek today arrives in front of
Yes,
Derek.
and you can't tell them about Bitcoin. You can't tell them about any of that stuff. You can only talk about Dungeons and Dragons. What would you tell your previous self?
I already knew about Bitcoin back then. Let's go with focus on getting better with each of the things that you've already planned. Meaning, go in with more of a learning mentality, and think about where your cognitive load is, because the players are going to do more work than you think they're going to do. You do not have to tell a whole story. This is not a stage performance. You do not have to tell a whole story for them, to them. They are right. They are the people on the stage. You are just the stage. It's okay when you're not talking to be planning. Too often in the early days, I thought that I had to be a performer, and that's true in a sense when you're an NPC to a degree, but really NPCs are there to serve that story that the players are investing themselves in. What are they caring about?
Okay.
And when it comes to the basic skills of how do you simulate the world, how do you talk to your players, how do you figure out rulings and stuff like that, just focus on one thing at a time, because it's too easy to think about 20 things at a time. Just simplify. That's what I would say in 1 minute or less.
And we're gonna dig into all of that more deeply, of course. But I just wanted to kind of get set the tone. So, Mike, same question.
I think the one thing that I would actually say is feel empowered to homebrew shit a lot earlier. You can do it. You can homebrew now. You're ready to homebrew now. Wizards of the Coast balance and all that shit, and
Nice.
interesting content. No, start homebrewing now. Don't wait for a whole arc, right? Feel empowered to not just to create your own monsters, to create your own traps, to create all these different things, and not just utilize what's in the monster manual and what's in these 5 ebooks. That would probably be the one thing.
Because you were against homebrew.
I was against homebrew for a long time. I'm like, well, because then the balance will be thrown off. That doesn't make any sense.
Can I ask a sub question, Andy?
course.
Is it all right?
Yeah,
It's
you may.
semi-related.
I give you
What was
permission.
with that being what you would tell your former self? What was the first thing that made you go, "I gotta homebrew this"? What was your first homebrew?
Ooh, that's a fantastic question.
Jesus.
I can already tell you this is gonna be like a 3-parter episode. It's already 10 o'clock.
I think. Well, I mean, the thing is, I went to Reddit. I went to the Stone Strix. If you're a dungeon master, I'm sure you've seen Stone Strix. He did Monster Day. Amazing stat blocks. Very well balanced. Very thematic. And he only released 100 monsters, and he fucked off. And he's like, I don't give a fuck. Fuck you guys. It's like one of those things where it's like in the time of need where he was like, was most wanted. He's just like, nah, I'm done. He quit while he was ahead. And I used his Pumpkin King stat block on our remote session. And
Our first virtual session. Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of what's the actual first thing that I actually homebrewed myself. I don't remember. It was in Arc 2, probably. I just reskinned things that were like homebrewed by other people. And so as far as when I actually had the confidence, it was basically, it was after, if you've watched Prime, probably after they left Gullhaven,
Wow.
I started doing homebrew of all of the bosses or whatever, and then King Krem and Orpheus were fully homebrew.
Yep.
So some point in between, like...
Yeah,
I started on the Diadra boss fight is when I really started homebrew, I guess. That was when I really started adding my things, and then I'm like, oh my god, let's fucking ramp this up for the final 2 bosses of this shit. So yeah, basically the first streamed arc of Prime is when I really started homebrewing.
Wow.
Myself.
Well
That's
said.
awesome.
And also, great question, Derek. I'm glad you thought of that because I wouldn't have, and I'm a terrible host. Moving on. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We have one question. I do have a question. I want to ask a question for Rich. What did you have, or what are you planning on having for dinner?
I had some ribs that Nikki made during Stardust Rhapsody. She made some ribs, and so I microwaved
Are
it.
there any ribs left?
Yeah, there's a bunch left.
Yeah.
Just wanted to keep you on your toes. More of those questions to come, Rich.
I'm
Don't
going
fall
to
asleep at the
destroy
wheel.
that
Okay.
tonight.
And I'll
Stay
probably
with
have
me.
some more ribs after this.
All right, stay
I'm
with
sure
me,
everyone's
Rich.
very
Don't
curious
I want ribs.
I'm gonna have
fall
ribs.
asleep on me. There's more questions coming. There's more questions like that coming, Rich. Hard-hitting questions, so you stay
All right.
with me.
I'm engaged.
Awesome. No, I really like this idea of starting with kind of stories first in this instance because there were some funny ones. These were good ones. We do have one question that I want to address before we move on to the next topic and start actually talking about the first time DM survival guide. So now is the reminder that if you want to ask any questions to us that will be read live on the show, kind of like calling you a radio station, you can super chat $5, which is basically the equivalent of a Twist of Fate on Twitch. And you can ask any question you'd like, if it pertains to D&D or not, that's fine. The question is from GG553. The drag episode of Witchlight, episode 14, lives in my head rent-free. So, Andy, I would love to know what name Torbeck would have had and what song he would do if he was there. I thought about this for a while, which is why it took so long to answer your question. He had made like they call me Bodacious T, joke like early on. I would have really had to work closely with Nikki, I think, to come up with a really good Torbeck drag name. And as far as the song goes, like I don't think I would pick these things on my own. Like I know that Rich and Kelsey and Nikki and I have some history of watching RuPaul's Drag Race, and we love it. But I have not watched nearly as much as my wife or Nikki have watched. So I would have had to rely on her to bounce some ideas off of to come up with some good ideas. So maybe that's a question for Nikki. I bet you she would come up with something on the spot, right? If you asked Nikki that question, she would probably just know the answer. But thank you so much for the question. And if anybody else has any questions, we'll be happy to address them during our segment breaks. So thank you. Other than that, basically, I want to start getting into the first time DM survival guide. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? But I think now, after 6 years of doing this, I think that even when it comes to every panel we've ever done, any topic we ever do regarding role-playing with other human beings, the first step that I always say is communication between player and DM. Does anyone disagree? I think that especially when you're sitting down to run a game for your friends, I think that there's a certain level of communication, conversations that you have to have with players with your DM, whether you're a player or a DM. Is that reasonable? Do you guys think that's a reasonable assessment?
I do. Yes.
Right. I think that the stories we just told are examples of exactly that. That you can be the most beginnery, but because both of us, Mikey and Derek, as DMs, had people that we could talk to and just have a good time about, regardless of how the game was going, that facilitated a communication, a very open, balanced line that made the game better for it.
I agree with you, and I think that's a fantastic assessment. So I kind of set up some thoughts, and maybe someday, much like the character creation process, we'll codify this. And I would love to make like a bespoke Patreon video, right, about first time DMing. But one of the first questions I think that players have to have with their DM and DMs have to have with their players is what does everybody want out of this game? Right, we've talked about this. There's a level of values hierarchy, right, where you need to decide that everybody's on the same page. What do the players want out of the game? What does the DM want out of the game? How do you approach that topic as a DM? More often than not, when we're starting a campaign in Avantris, we're saying like, hey, so and so has an idea for this thing. We're kind of going this direction, right? How do you guys as DMs approach your players about what does everybody want out of the game? What advice would you give to a new DM about putting together a group of people and saying, we want to make sure that our values are aligned, right?
This, I think, is one of the most difficult things to do. I think it's something that we didn't do, certainly, starting out, and I think that it's a very difficult ask almost sometimes, because I think that basically what I would say is it's very important for a successful D&D table. It is very important that everyone is seeking the same kind of they're all aligned in their philosophy and their values when it comes to D&D, what they're trying to get out of this whole thing. And if not every single person has the same North Star, the same philosophy, the same goals, then it can utterly destroy the group, utterly destroy the party, and turn D&D from, in my opinion, the best hobby on the fucking planet to an absolute nightmare that destroys friendships. Like, it's an unfortunate reality that because it allows, D&D is a very emotional game. It's a vulnerable game. It is a game that can forge the strongest friendships possible. But because it does that, it's a double-edged sword where because it can do that, it also can destroy friendships, honestly, very easily, I think.
Yep.
And,
I think it's well said.
And so that is caused by friction, which is caused by differing desired outcomes from a game. And when there is that differing goals, inherently there will be friction, and when that friction happens, inherently there will be resentment, and if that resentment isn't addressed, inherently it will lead to the party and potentially relationships being destroyed. And I know I'm sounding like I'm dramatic as fuck, but I think
it's true.
It's true. It's true.
No, I don't think you're being overly dramatic. I think that you are assessing the situation from things that we've experienced, from things that we've seen, and not to dive into this or whatever, but I follow the D&D subreddit. Right, is literally every single post is like, how do I deal with X? How do I deal with Y? And the answer is always communication. But you see these stories that these people tell, where it ruins friendships, or it ruins, you might have been friendly with somebody beforehand and you try to do this thing and it's like, it doesn't play out. So I don't think you're being overly dramatic at all. I think you're being very realistic.
And so it's one of those things
keep going.
Where I'm sorry that I'm monologuing.
No, you're good.
Here.
Keep going.
But it's one of those things where, like, especially when we had channel point redeeming for questions. And so we got a lot of questions that were like, I'm having this problem in my group and blah, 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 blah. I'm having this problem in my group because of this. These people don't like my character. Or I don't like these people's character. I don't like this. We have issues. What should I do? And I will say and I hate to say this, I think I gave the advice. I probably said it a lot less bluntly. It's the answer every single time was find a new group. Every single time was find a new group. This is not the right group for you. And
yeah, which is hard for people to hear, because if it's your only chance to play D&D, you don't want to feel like you're being completely denied this opportunity.
Yeah, and that's the thing where I believe that no D&D is better than bad D&D. I think we kind of have that as a philosophy amongst everyone here at Avantris. And so the idea of, I think 10 times out of 10, not even 9 times out of 10, every single time it was just not like, obviously the idea is sometimes these conflicts are just from a lack of communication, and there's a misunderstanding, obviously. So go to your point, Andy. It's all about communication, is that if there is friction, but everyone should be aligned, then it's a miscommunication, and then we should be adults. And I suggest with your relationships, if it's romantic, if it's personal, if it's at work, if it's friendships, family, communication, be open and honest. Do not let the resentment build. That's just objective adulthood and how to have healthy relationships, period.
It's funny how much just being a mature human overlaps with playing a game like Dungeons & Dragons. And at the end of the day, this is a game, and it shouldn't cause you stress. It shouldn't cause you mental anguish. You shouldn't be in pain over it. Derek, thoughts?
Those are some really good points you've made, Mikey.
Thank you.
Back to Mikey.
I think that it's really important, and I know that the DM has a lot of weight on their shoulders when it comes to running the game. But I do think that this is something that, if until it gets into that place where it's more than the game, where it's about the personalities, I still think that it is very much on the shoulders of the game master or dungeon master to facilitate good communication and make sure that everyone's on the same page. Yeah. Who else is going to do it? It's your responsibility, and you have a lot of responsibilities as the dungeon master, but it's your responsibility to make sure that before the game and between games, that people are happy, that people are feeling heard, that the game is the balance of things that they are looking for. If I'm asking you to play in a campaign with me, I'm asking you for 40 to 400 hours of your life. Let's not waste anybody's time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very well said.
Let's make sure that we're all really comfortable. Let's make sure that we're having a great time. Let's all row in that same direction. And the dungeon master can be the one who points at that horizon and starts walking and gets everybody to join them in that direction. That's hugely important. I think that I would also add on the side of communication, I liken it to deck construction games like Magic the Gathering, where there's playing the game where you actually draw a hand and you're playing, and then there's the deck construction between games where you're changing out your cards. Dungeons & Dragons is something that you play in both ways also. Dungeons & Dragons is played where you're creating your character and prepping your session and doing everything before you draw your hand, and then sit down and go, let's start tonight's session. You fire a gun in the air, and now we're adventuring. We're going into the dungeon. We're defeating the dragons. We're getting all of the treasure, all of those things. When it comes to communication, it's not just how you're talking about the game and how you're playing the game, but when it comes to those more sensitive things and the ideas of being vulnerable, everything Mikey was just talking about, during a game is you have to pick your battles. That is not the best time necessarily to step back and go, let's have a whole communication about some particular sensitive topic. I think about managerial styles in the corporate or business world. When everyone's in the meeting, that's not the time to point out that somebody made a mistake. Instead, it's private one-on-one time when you are out of the meeting that it's the best time to be like, hey, you messed up on that thing, or I need to see more of this. Or if someone is having a problem, they came to you, or you need to express it to them, or you're expressing to them on the behalf of another player, or you're playing that social, all of those things. Stopping in the middle of a session and calling someone out isn't good communication. I don't think that's unless they've crossed a line where it's like, we need to pause, we're using safety tools, we need to actually pump the brakes. Yeah. Find graceful ways to have the right communication in the right place is a skill, and it's something that you can get better at over time, and it's something that all dungeon masters need to be equipped with.
So I think that a lot of what we'll talk about tonight, these as always, as you address things, they're going to bleed into other things that we're going to talk about as we move forward. So we might repeat ourselves a little bit, but that's okay. One of the big ones that I think is important to address, and I can think of several very specific instances. So I want you guys to give me your own opinion, but I'll fill in the gaps if you don't mention what I'm thinking of. Is I think that as a dungeon master, you have to kind of take the lead and talk to your players about setting the type of tone that you're going for as a DM. This is part of the pre-communication process, right? Yep. Can you give us examples of times that you've had conversations with us as players to say, like, hey, this is what I'm going for. Like, let's get on the same page.
I mean, I think that we've kind of perfected the style. We've not perfected, So I mean, there is a reason why in Avantris, the people that we have at our table are all our real life friends. We've known each other for many years. We all love each other very much. We're not a cast looking for new members. We're not doing casting calls for new campaigns. This is something that because we take it very seriously, right? And I think that it has allowed us the comfort and the ease at which to do this. And I think that the big example is for Curse of Strahdanya, I think that you see the example where people go in and it's like, oh, well, I only listen to podcasts, and Curse of Strahdanya is the only fucking podcast that we have going. Apologies to the tens of thousands of people that we're letting
We'll
down.
Get there.
But Nikki was very clear about, like, it's a gothic horror story. We need to take it seriously. Like, it's not the same level of goofy goober. And we all understood the assignment. And people are like, oh my god, this is so much more fucking serious than Witchlight. I'm like, yeah, because that was deliberate. It was by design. We had communication ahead of time. And we built the party to be more serious. And obviously we had plenty of humor, especially like once we kind of figured out the balance of humor and drama and horror. But it was basically saying, hey, this is the tone I'm trying to set. And like, this is what I'm trying to achieve. And I think that basically, once again, it's all comes down to, I mean, basically we can like probably, cover most of the ground and give you the best tools. Basically, everyone needs to be very explicit about, this is what I'm trying to achieve, whether it's a DM, a player, and all of this. And kind of the thing that kind of makes me, I gotta be real here, right? There are people who are like, man, I was playing my character and I thought what my character would have done, and I thought I was being like, it was in my nature, it was in my character and all of this, and everyone else was like so mean to me, they shut me down, blah, blah, blah. And I hate to say it, a lot of times, maybe even most of the time, you're probably the problem. And I don't mean to say that you're a problem, it was a problem the way that you did it. It's if you are in the game where everybody else is trying to achieve something, but what you're trying to achieve is different, then at the end of the day, that's not the right table for you, right? And so I think it was like, oh, well, everyone was so mean to me, blah, blah, blah. And obviously, if people are rude, if they cross a line, that's never okay. And there needs to be adult maturity. Yep. But I think a lot of times is that make sure that you don't also apply the victim mentality, right? Of, oh, well, I wasn't catered to in the game the group that I was in, so everyone needs to cater to me. Like, that's also not the case. Is that you need to basically, you need to ask for respect of how you want to play, but you also need to respect how other people want to play, which is why I so strongly make sure that you find the right group for you, and if you're a DM, you find the right players for you that are all trying to achieve the same thing, and you're all rowing in the same direction. And if there's ever a session where you're like, man, that one person or those two people, that was great, but if that is if that happens at all, and especially if it becomes a recurring theme, red alert, address it immediately, right? Because that will eat away at the thing.
I have one more piece to it. Sorry, Andy.
Yeah. No, I know it's your turn.
I have one more piece to add on the topic of communication, and this took me a long time to learn, and I'm still getting better at it. And I think that our creation process for Stardust Rhapsody is a really good example of us being good at this, doing well at this. Do not pull your punches when you are communicating as a dungeon master. This is about the game itself. When it comes to rudeness and personalities and the emotions and vulnerabilities that can get all wrapped up, there's that. But there is also, when you are conveying your expectations about the story, it is so easy to fall into a beginner's trap, which is, I'm going to tell them this, and I've got all these secrets and surprises lined up for them. I've got all these little things that I told them this, and all of a sudden, that is such a seductive way of thinking that you are going to actually hurt your game doing. If you want to do something, there's nothing wrong with having surprises in the sense that the story might have them, but when it comes to what you are conveying to your players about the type of game that you want to play and the story that you want to do and the tone that you want to, you need to tell them right. Don't waste anyone's time. You need to tell them right at the very, very start. Do not pull your punches when it comes to your expectations as a dungeon master. That is something that is easy to miss and easy to fail at by making excuses that, this is going to be some big reveal. It's easy to pull the wool over your eyes that way. I over communicate as a DM, your expectations, and especially before the game.
Yeah.
Well said.
And I feel like, I hate to sound like doom and gloom. I feel like it's kind of turned this, but I mean, I think that it's one of the things that, especially something that I've learned and was a very interesting takeaway from me, running games for strangers at conventions when we used to run games when we would guest. And while I saw it was beautiful when I could see a group of strangers cheering and celebrating and high-fiving after achieving something together, I'm like, yes, this is the fucking joy of collaborative storytelling and D&D and tabletop in general. I've also seen the opposite, where I have seen of two people or a group of people who had just met and don't know each other all, fucking hate each other. Visceral, resentful hatred, very clearly in venom, in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Because the way that they were playing D&D was not how conflicted and clashed with how they wanted to play D&D. And I have never seen human beings turn on each other that quickly before.
Right, yeah.
And I'm being dramatic. But go ahead.
I was going to say, it was at Anime USA this almost a year ago now, where I in the same day had the highest high and the lowest low in back-to-back groups that I DM'd for, where, like you, I witnessed literal magic, where I was like, this has restored my faith in humanity, and humanity can overcome anything. And the next game that I ran, I was like, well, it's all over. I guess I'll hang it up for good and I'll never play D&D again.
Yeah.
So I feel you. And to qualify, I don't think you're being doom and gloom. We talk about this a lot. A lot of people, when I think that I'm very realistic, I think that we're all pretty down to earth. There's a pragmatism that we have, a level of pragmatism. And people will label that as pessimism, and I don't think that's true. I think being realistic, and I think level setting with especially people who may not know what they're getting into, being a first-time DM is not doom and gloom. It's not pessimism. It's very realistic, right? It's realism. So continue. I don't mean to cut you off.
No, I think that's really important. My first 5-6 sessions that campaign lasted before we ended up realizing that the true BBEG is the calendar.
We're getting to that next. That
first campaign didn't have any of the things that we're talking about when it came to player relationships, or how like they were all good friends, we were all good friends. It went smoothly, and we had some risky stuff in there. It was fine. But as soon as if it happens to you where it takes a turn and you go to the dark side, you'll realize that you wish that you had put more protection on yourself and on the players and on the conversation from the beginning.
Yeah.
And we get comments occasionally of like people on TikTok or YouTube or whatever, and they're saying, I would fucking hate to play with these fucking people. Like, this is like a bunch of improv bullshit, blah blah
Sure.
blah. And I don't have any problem.
I'm sure
right?
a lot of people would.
And they would. And that's totally fine, right? And it's
There's a table where they're going to have their bliss, and I hope that they find it.
Exactly.
There was a comment that lives in my head, and I won't say rent free because it's not. It doesn't bother me. It's more that I think is funny, right? I'll never forget. Mike and I were at a concert. We were manning the merch booth at Eyes of the Nile.
Oh yeah.
And I showed you. I was like, look, I can't believe these people exist. It's humorous to me. It's not offensive. And I showed Mike, and it was somebody wrote on one of our TikToks like "death to silly D&D," and I was like,
yeah,
okay, man. Hey, if that's your bag, that's your bag. But I don't know how you can be so hateful, right? How you can be so full of vitriol, right?
It's easy to write a comment like that in 5 seconds and forget about it. The hateful comments don't bother me as long as somebody is pursuing joy about the game. I mean, right? If they think that that's just not what D&D is, so we can have that debate. But I'm more than happy to be like, hey, there are people who play this like a board game. They play Dungeons and Dragons the same way you would play Monopoly, and they're having the best time of their lives. And
it's not our. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not our job to convince them.
Absolutely.
That's why I always have the disclaimer.
Different strokes.
Right.
And there's if you want to play that grognard D&D style, especially you want to play AD&D, right? Isn't that like kind of like the classic thing that the grognards really like, or whatever it is? And you want to have your DMPC, and you want to have entirely not active role play and all of that, and it's very much a board game where you're becoming lords and commanding armies. That's fucking amazing, right? And and even like the stuff that we put out, like I want to be able to like people. There'll be tools to tell really amazing stories and all of that, and have role play prompts in like the Crooked Moon. But I also want people to see this, like, oh wow, these are cool monsters, and this is a cool setting, and we can play the grognardiest 5th edition D&D as much such thing as possible in 5th edition, right? And both are totally valid ways to play. But it all comes down to just finding the right table for you. And I think that honestly, I guess we spent like 30 minutes to an hour just saying the overall advice: finding the right table and make sure every single person at that table is entirely aligned on what they're trying to get out of the session, out of the game.
I'm gonna write Nikki and have one of her Feywild curses be for one of us. You have to play Dungeons and Dragons like an old school Grognard.
That's
like
funny.
That'd be really fucking fun.
That's a good one. I want to also be very clear to say that yes, we are, the root of this whole segment is conversations with players, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what it's going to boil down to. But I do want to just draw attention to the common pitfalls and ways that you can avoid them, even if the simple answer is communication with players. So it's okay if we repeat ourselves a little bit. And the next one is the one that Derek kind of brought up. We all joke that the calendar is the BBEG, the big bad evil guy, right? That's something that we have struggled with for various points in time for years before we got to this point where we're at a level of consistency, which is great. But so my point is, you as the DM, what can you do to help prevent the calendar from being the big bad? And one of the answers, and I kind of want you to expand upon this, it's less of a question, it's more of a here's a suggestion, and I want to give you guys the tee up, is scheduling and aligning on levels of commitment. That's a huge thing, right? It's let's talk about schedule, let's talk about how often we're playing, and let's talk about every individual's level of commitment. And what do you guys think about that?
I think that commitment is the right word. I think that it's easy to think of Dungeons and Dragons outside of the category where it needs to live in order to be successful. What do I mean by that? I mean, anyone can invite some friends over and play one of the many hundreds of unbelievable board games that have come out in the last 15 years. We're living in a fucking golden age. They're unbelievable. Hey, let's crack out some Quantum, or we're gonna play some Sheriff of Nottingham, or we're gonna play Cards Against Humanity. Let's just have some fun, and we're all friends. We're gonna hang out anyway. Might as well break out a board game. might as well break out a board game as not Dungeons and Dragons, especially if you're playing more than a one-shot. If you're playing a campaign, you have crossed a threshold into bowling league territory. You are now in a bowling league. We're all going to show up on this day every week, or we're going to show up at a regular frequency that makes sense, because it's going to take 40 to 400 hours to tell this fucking story. I got a source book right here. Do you want to defeat Strahd? You can't do it in a week. You can't do it in a month. You can maybe do it in 10 months if we play every week and you want to tell the story right. If you're going to do that, commit. Everyone needs to have a buy-in on, wow, I can't do that thing on Tuesday night because I'm going to my bowling league. I'm part of a sports team. My sports team is Dungeons and Dragons. The baseball team is relying on me to show up. I'm the shortstop. I need to be there. The mentality needs to be everyone is showing up.
I feel
period.
the energy radiating from Rich right now.
I was gonna say
I can toast a marshmallow right here.
Yeah. I teed this one up specifically so Rich could get a word in edgewise.
What do you think about that? Because I've got a second thing to add on to that. But Rich, I'd be curious. The second thing is where I was heading with that. The segue is you have to explain the calendar. You have to explain the time. You have to, especially once they've played one or two sessions. If they're experienced players, they should understand how long it takes to do anything in Dungeons and Dragons. But when you're dealing with beginner players, you have to be like, oh, you want to play a game where your character goes and defeats the terrible princess in her tower and all of the things that you have in your backstory. Do you know how long it's going to take? You're going to walk down the forest path. You're going to defeat some twig blights, and you're going to talk to a guy who's kind of drunk about what's happening in town, and you're going to do that. And all of a sudden, you're going to blink, and it was 8 p.m., and now it's 11 p.m., and everyone has to go home because they've got work in the morning. It takes a long time to do things sometimes. Sometimes it's greased lightning, and in 4 hours or 5 hours, a lot happens. But especially at the beginner levels of play, for the DM or for newer players, it takes a long time to be like, oh, combat, wow, that was 2 hours of tonight. That was 2 hours? How did that take 2 hours?
Yeah.
The calendar challenge is not just the commitment, but the don't waste my time factor. The fact that sometimes a session, because there was a lot of cul-de-sacs, takes longer than you had expected because you don't want to get in the way. You don't want to take agency away. I mean, Mikey talked about the importance of pacing at the beginning. That is a huge skill. And until a group figures out pacing, and until the DM figures out pacing, you're going to have those little slips. Making sure that you have a regular, frequent evening or a very strong commitment to when we say we are playing D&D, we are playing D&D, and we show up and someone fires a gun in the air and at 1 p.m. we're off, it's hard to tell a full story. Very few campaigns finish, and it's because of those kinds of reasons.
Well
said.
I'm going to hop in because Richie's going to say basically everything that I would say.
Fair enough.
But what it comes down to is when calendars do not line up, it's not that they can't. It's that and this is for all of the relationships in your life. This is some romantic relationship advice, especially, but friendships or whatever. It's not that they don't have enough time. If they actually wanted to, they would make time. If they wanted to,
are you actually just he's not that intoing you us?
Yes. No. That's literally all it is. It is. If they wanted to, they would. I know you see. Your Aunt Karen shares the fucking little image graphic on Facebook about that shit, but it's fucking true. If they wanted to, they would. And so it's one of those things to think about all the time. And I could go on Richie of all the time spent watching Netflix, all this time spent watching YouTube, all the time going to brunch, all the time going to happy hours, all of the time. I'm stealing your material, Rich. All of the time that they spend doing other shit, it's like, oh, D&D sounds fine, but if something better comes along, I'll just do that instead. They shouldn't be in your group, right? And so that makes it difficult. And once again, I hate to say find a new group or find new people, but at the end of the day, it's finding people who share the same level of commitment as well. That's how you make the calendar work. Go ahead, Rich.
I think this is the most challenging part of Dungeons and Dragons, but also probably the most important thing to do, is to find a group that shares your level of commitment. Mike said basically a lot of what I was gonna say, but
Sorry.
you know, at the end
This
of
is the DM, so I'm allowing you to speak.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I really
Jesus.
appreciate that.
You may go now.
I may go now. For dinner, I had ribs. No, but
Don't worry, I got more of those hot zingers coming.
I
Rich.
can't wait. Yeah, and I think that to Mike's point about a lot of people, they like the idea of it as like, you know what, D&D is like a fun, nerdy thing to do. And yeah, I'll show up and roll some dice, right? But when you have to schedule things and it has to be somewhat regular to get through a story, you unfortunately can't have that attitude unless everybody has that attitude. And it's like,
Right.
yeah, let's just fucking roll some dice whenever we all feel like it. But like, if you have a member that's hesitant to commit to this Saturday, because like, what if they get invited to do anything else, right? You need to basically banish, and again, no wrong fun, but in my opinion, those people, unfortunately, if you want to play every week and you are committed and you want to play D&D, those are fundamentally incompatible with the commitment levels of the people that, oh, I will do it because it's fun, but what if I get invited to something that's outside in the summer? What if I get invited to go get drinks at a bar, right? What if I have to, do this thing that I knew D&D was on Saturday, but yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do this other thing instead. Sorry, people, right?
It's just a game, bro.
It's just a game, bro.
Fucking take it
Just
easy,
a game,
bro.
bro. But at the same time, if
yeah.
you don't think that Aunt Karen doesn't show up every fucking Wednesday night for bridge, you're crazy.
Bunko.
Yeah.
For Bunko.
I mean, that's a really good point. Where we have had people on. Let me choose my words carefully. We have had scenarios where people have had other weekly commitments of playing bridge. Where every Monday they want to show up and play bridge, but playing D&D once a week was too much because they didn't want to have their Wednesday taken up by D&D because they already had their Monday taken up by bridge, right? So that is a fundamental disconnect that there is no resolution, right? And you have to continually build your inner circle and find your group where everybody has the same level. It's very challenging. It's hard to basically find those people. But once you do, you'll be very glad that you did. And then you're not rending your flesh of, oh my God, I want to do this. I care so much. And yet other people in the group don't. And so, you spin up a second campaign and then you're playing this other campaign and it sort of forces you to maybe start a whole new campaign and go off with a different group that shares your values.
And I think what I would say is match enthusiasm. Find people who share your level of enthusiasm because A, you'll have an amazing, unbelievable time and forge lifelong friendships that are very strong. But there is nothing worse than someone who makes you feel silly or stupid or nerdy or obsessive for being more enthusiastic about the game than they are.
Yep.
And
So
that
to layer,
is poison, and just purge those people from your life. Man, I'm getting fired up.
So layer onto that, this is a new DM survival guide, and everything that we do, we crank it up to 11. Okay, so that is very important to keep the context of the situation. If you're a new DM, you're not necessarily going to find people who are as committed as we are, right? And it's very important to keep that in mind. And it's exactly what Rich was saying, right? Where it's like, if you find people who just want to roll dice when they can, that's okay. That is totally fine. But the idea, the key crux of the argument is that everybody just has to be on the same page, which is why it's under the conversation with players segment. So just keep that in mind, right? Especially as a first-time DM, it may be very difficult for you to find people who have the same enthusiasm that you do, and that's okay. You just got to keep looking, and I don't want to say compromise because maybe that's not the best way to do it, but you definitely, the key is conversation. The key is making sure that everybody values and is committed to the same level. They have the same level of enthusiasm, and you will get there. You will get there, right? And I think that's okay. It's okay if it's not a weekly thing. It's okay if it's a monthly thing. It's okay if it's a every other month thing, right? It's a matter of you as a first time DM being willing to take the reins and kind of guide this group of people to a level of commitment, or finding a level of commitment amongst them, and enthusiasm amongst them that matches your own. Have I said anything? Do you disagree, agree? Any additional thoughts on that?
I think here's a good guideline that I think you could use as a barometer or as a weather vane or anything else is, if there is a person that cannot commit to once every 6 weeks, right? I think, to me, that's when, like, don't even try to play D&D with this person.
Yeah.
Right? Where, to me, if you're a group and you meet up every 4 to 6 weeks and you can't even get one person to commit to one Saturday every 6 weeks or one weeknight every 6 weeks, that person doesn't give a fuck, right? Like that person truly doesn't care, and they're not worth trying to play with. We've had, personal experience with that, where it's like you have to sort of move on and just do your own thing, and you can't rely on those people that can't even commit to that level.
Yep.
And I think that that's a fair amount, where it's like, well, sometimes even once a month can be tough, but I feel like once every 6 weeks is completely reasonable for most adults.
And
Sure.
I want to say that this is advice that's not just D&D. This is anything in your life. When it comes to whatever passion, if it is your fucking Pride and Prejudice book club, have the same fucking ruthless attitude about it.
Yep.
And that it's not just D&D. It's literally any kind of group activity that requires a commitment in order to do in a fulfilling way.
I think final thought that I have is anytime you have a group activity, every person that you add compounds the difficulty of getting everybody in the same group, right? But what I would say is the difference with D&D is that when you're telling a story, it's often different to have a missing character. Well, if it happens to be your Pride and Prejudice book club, it's like, well, just read the fucking chapter and show up next month, right? So D&D is kind of unique in that scenario where the constraints are a bit more stringent, right? A little bit more rigid, and it's just something to keep in mind. We do have a couple.
It hurts when someone's not present.
Yeah, agreed.
We're playing Lord of the Rings. I know that that's not actually the case, and Lord of the Rings is not a huge amount to do with Dungeons and Dragons if you really think about the big picture. But if every time you were to play Lord of the Rings, one of the Fellowship wasn't there for some reason, well, then it was a different person every time.
My attention is drawn to Dol Guldur.
Then
it doesn't make any sense.
Sauron would have won.
The necromancer.
We do have a couple of questions, but I do want to say as a final point, I had the most absurd running streak of when I was supposed to be in a campaign I didn't miss. And the first time that I missed was the birth of my daughter.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's not to say that, there were times that we were all supposed to be there and we canceled for one reason or another because, I couldn't be there, somebody couldn't be there. And so there's a little bit of leeway there. But I think about how when we streamed, if I was supposed to be there, I was in my seat, and the day that I missed was the birth of my daughter. So, you put that in your back pocket. I don't know. Put that.
And so when Rich has been talking about lack of commitment.
Yeah, you guys are
This is a confrontation, Andy.
Yeah, you've actually brought me here. This is an intervention.
Well,
that's right.
That brings up a really good point. And this is literally why I wanted to start streaming, was if you want to play D&D on a weekly cadence and you need some kind of skin in the game, stream it. Stream it weekly. Nobody has to fucking watch. But putting it on a weekly schedule. Prime, before we streamed, we had a 6-month break for a lot of the reasons we've discussed in this session, right? The second we started streaming weekly, it was
every week.
It was for the most part, right?
Yeah.
Like we would cancel here and there, but
I mean, for the most part,
we got
except for the
consistent.
AI, the AI that read our tweets about us, it kept thinking that we canceled all the fucking time.
Because it had 4 years of data where we did cancel, occasionally, right? And to be fair, even when we weren't streaming, there were a couple of times that we would cancel where we had very good reasons and not reasons that I'm ever even going to fucking delve into. But, there were also equally number of times where we canceled because we had shitty reasons for one example, for one reason or another. But anyway, I'm not going to belabor the point. Any final thoughts on the schedule?
My final thought is that we are so close
Oh boy.
to
Are we
2,600
really?
VIPs at the Crooked Moon.
Well, now I got to check because I didn't think we were going to hit it today. But
We
that
are
means we're on
17
pace.
away.
That means we're on pace for 100 a day.
We are
guys.
2,700?
17 away. And so,
2,700?
so 17 is a lot. We are close, but if we don't hit 17, if we don't hit 2,600 by tonight, we will not get the awesome
20
reveal.
26.
So
let me just tell you that my math wiener is huge right now.
you've got a nice big math wiener, Andy.
Thank you.
I appreciate. I'm Myron your math wiener.
It's girthy. It's girthy, and we can calculate it if you want. We can meet up after this and calculate the girth of my.
Let's change the subject. I don't want
Yeah,
to
please.
Anyway, yeah. So
Come
we
at
are
me,
very
Susan
close. We are so close in more ways than one to breaking the next record to getting a double reveal in our VIP Discord. So we do have a couple of questions that I'd like to answer. But Mike, would you please kindly take a few minutes to maybe explain where those reveals are happening and how you get access to those sneak peeks?
The VIP Discord for the Crooked Moon. There is a sneak peek channel where I am dropping cool sneak peeks and reveals as we are like 43 days away from launch, something like that. We're not sure when we haven't announced officially, but we are 45 days away. We are getting there, and it is soon. And so we're counting down to early October. We're getting reveals, and so it's a lot of cool stuff. People are freaking out. We just revealed one of our subclasses
Oh, we did.
in the
I
VIP
saw
Discord this morning, or this morning for me, which I guess is afternoon
Yeah, touche.
for most people. Pacific time morning. So yeah, join the VIP Discord when you become a VIP. It's a really fun time, a lot of fun discussion.
Awesome. Thank you. Questions. We got a couple of questions, some good ones.
Let her rip.
Chloe asked, people and me want to hear you talk about your stream DM debut with Torbeck, Andy.
Yeah.
Still one of the most awesome reveals in LOA history. Thank you. That was, again, I know I always say this, but I mean it. It's becoming cliche, and I hate that it becomes a cliche, but it was a huge team effort. Could not have done it alone. I want to say that it was kind of like Rich and Mike's idea. Mike wrote the stat block. Rich helped get Nikki on board. Nikki was so gracious to allow me to do it. It was not my first time DMing ever, but it was my first time DMing ever on the channel. And let me tell you, I am not someone who gets nervous frequently. Like, it's very rare when I get nervous. That was one of them. I can count the number of times on one hand that I've been nervous for Legends of Avantris stuff, and that was definitely one of them. But it was an absolute blast. It went so much better than I ever could have imagined. Everybody was unbelievably gracious, and we got to kind of show off some cool Gorbeck stuff that might be coming down the pipeline narratively, but that's all in Nikki's hands now. I don't know anything about it. So
I think Nikki just wanted you to kill us, like as much as possible.
I definitely pulled some punches, and in hindsight, I think I would have gone a little harder. But the problem with
I overtuned the fight for sure.
Well, so right, and that's why I kind of took my foot off the gas a little bit, because I was like, oh god, if I do everything that I can do every round, I'll kill them in 3
Yeah,
rounds.
I was sitting there and I'm like, oh boy. This was
So
calculated, but boy am I bad at math.
Yeah, I took my
Mikey
foot off the
says
gas.
homebrewingly.
No. Look, we didn't have time to play test it, right? Which is fine. I took my foot off the gas, but I took my foot off the gas a little too hard. What I was gonna say was the problem with D&D 5e is, like, if I had killed, like, Gideon, I think was one of the closest. No, I did kill Gideon, and he popped back up because of the coffee. If I had killed anybody else initially, the fight would have continued normally. But as soon as I killed Gideon, you all fucking go down, right? And it's like I had to be very careful, especially with Rich doing his unbelievably amazing in character role play of, I'm going to suggest you do something, but I'm babbling nonsense so you can't actually understand me, right? It was all these little things that added up to be an unbelievable experience.
We're own worst enemy.
Yeah,
D&D.
so thank you. I thank all of you for that. You guys made it all possible. So great question. We appreciate the support.
I mean,
Thank you.
Andy, you are, I don't know why you're asking me about this DM stuff. You are technically more of a recent DM on this channel than I am.
That's true.
Yeah, that's
So
actually
I don't know why
true.
you're asking me questions.
No, it's fine. I'm teasing. Apocarly with the $20 super chat. Thank you so much. Unbelievably generous. Says, I'm finally getting to the point where I am finally understanding D&D as a player. I am now wanting to DM. Is it a good idea to make a packet of questions for the players to incorporate elements to be able to tell my story? I think that's a fantastic question. What do the DMs think?
Yes.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much for the $20 super
Thank
chat,
you.
Apocarly.
Incredibly generous.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you.
Mikey, go ahead.
Derek, packets is kind of your whole thing. Packets and handouts.
I think
structure.
crucially, the reason why I was going to ask if you had thoughts initially is because I am reevaluating what that looks like. I think that if you are looking to be a beginner DM and you are just getting started, that having questions that suss out the kind of player you are is meaningfully important. But if we were to put it to the three of the folks here who are all in Icebound, what were some of the questions that I asked you in the beginning?
Oh, my goodness. You asked us about like short-term, medium-term, long-term goals. You asked us about desires. You asked us about all sorts of stuff. I actually don't remember
Three pillars
all
of
them.
D&D.
How does it feel now thinking about the game that we've played, thinking back about those questions? Did those aid? Did those help take you in the right direction? Or
for
was
sure.
it that's interesting. Okay.
I would say no, personally.
I think that the questions that you think are going to plant seeds for your players to think about in terms of their characters feel like they're going to be much more valuable than they actually are at the start of the campaign.
So I think for me, it was a unique experience because my character changed so drastically from when I created Scrim to the final production. But I actually do believe that your questions helped me get to final Scrim.
I'm glad to hear that.
I have a different take on this, and the reason why is because I feel like this, when you do the patented Avantris character creation process, this I feel like is super optional, and I feel like if I didn't turn in that handout, Derek would have known pretty much who Yornir was, what he was about. We were plugged in enough; it was collaborative already. We're like, I don't know if anything I put in that packet was illuminating or new, right? And so what I would say is I think in most cases, and especially for new DMs and new parties, it's probably invaluable to do that. But what I would say is, like, for our table, Mace didn't have us fill out any packets in Stardust Rhapsody, and I think that the party feels just as great and cohesive.
And the reason why I made the distinction there is between finding out who your players are. Those questions for a beginning game of Dungeons and Dragons is invaluable. It's priceless if the questions are that. But I've been on the fence about the value of what are your fears, what are your short-term goals, what are your long-term goals.
Oh no, we don't need to do that anymore. But it's
We
one of those
don't.
things.
That's my point.
But
the question of whether that's valuable to beginner players and beginner
Yes,
DMs.
that's the
is what
distinction.
That was my point.
I'm still also questioning that. I'm still also saying, how much social, how much exploration, how much combat do you want? How deadly should it be? Those are player-based questions that I think are valuable to ask and answer.
To further
character, there's a I don't know how to fully give you like all of the tools you need to answer that question. It varies from table to table, from DM to DM.
To further Rich's point and to solidify his point, if we look at the scenario of it helped me and it didn't help Rich and Yornir, it's that you look at those characters in original Scrim versus Yornir then and now, is that Yornir was rock solid and Scrim was a fucking mess, right? And that's exactly speaks to the point that Rich was working toward. But yeah,
I guess just a last thing. Going all the way back to my first packet that I ever sent out was for You Will Be Witness, and I had questions that I asked in that for my players. That, again, going back to what we were talking about with communication, don't pull your punches, I thought was a really cool way to get people to think about the campaign in a certain way, and that I was going to be this puppet master of the whole thing. None of that was necessary. I should have been more upfront with what my expectations were in the first place, and those questions could have been better spent on other things. So yes, create a packet. Yes, ask questions. We've been saying this whole night communication is the number one thing, but don't overvalue the questions that are about character, because people may just be figuring that out. And there are other ways to get to a successful outcome when it comes to those things than a prompt or a survey.
Mike, did you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that basically the more that you can learn your friends and your players, right? Where I think that, like, it's learning. God, I gotta fucking figure out how to word this shit.
Well, while you're thinking,
learning who are the persnickety players. I think in a certain thing are there players who are going to be like, well, I don't know if this is right for me. I don't know if, like, you know, there are certain people there's certain players that I have that I know that, like, no matter what I do, no matter what campaign I have, no matter what I do, they're going to be fucking all in. They're going to show up to the table. They're going to have an amazing time. Richie, Mace, you know, I know that. There are also players that will be like, man, at least historically, I'm like, yikes, I'm going to need to kind of choose how I run the game and play to make sure that, like, that they are not going to get frustrated. And I think that learning who needs a little bit more attention, needs a little bit more care, needs a little bit more catering to, that's very important. So I would ask the kind of questions about kind of what they're looking for, what they want to see, and try to gauge how the level at which they need that level of specificity. I don't know how to say this.
Like white glove handling.
White glove handling, right?
Red carpet.
Yeah. Maybe not red. Yeah, but yeah, white glove handling, and basically that will help you kind of DM and plan until you're able to just kind of do it in your sleep. Is my advice.
Good question.
yeah, we actually have another question, and I can already tell you this is going to be a two-parter. We didn't get through half of what I wrote down, so
Good.
we'll keep answering user questions, and then I think next week we're just going to do a second part of this because there is too much to cover, considering that it's almost 11 already. This one went by in a flash. So we have another question from Different Paper. Going to be a first-time DM for a one-shot for my friends. Any advice on how to get them invested to what is going on? We talked about this very briefly as you guys told your stories of the first times that you DM'd, and Derek mentioned, them skipping an entire dungeon. So go for it. Like, talk about a little bit about that. What have you done in the past? What did you learn from your first sessions DMing to how to incorporate a plot hook or any kind of hook to get people interested in what you're doing?
I think this, looking at the conference experience that I've had, where you need to get people from 0 to 100 very quickly, tell them that they are invested. Tell them that their characters are invested in the thing. That is a conceit of this adventure, that they care about the thing. Okay. That is actually what I mean when I say don't pull your punches, don't be coy, don't do a bunch of magic tricks and try to charm them into it. You can just say, hey, you care about this, and you can give them the reasons. That's ammunition that they can use for role playing and as they think about their characters. And then you can ask them, okay, we need to go get the Gauntlet of Doom, and it's in that dungeon. And you know that it's filled with horrible goblins and that they've got a bunch of weird magic tricks. These particular goblins are terrible. Fine. They've got all kinds of weird tricks. And you got to go in there and recover the gauntlet because you care about the gauntlet, because you're make up an excuse. You're part of the country or the kingdom, the nation that does this thing that the gauntlet relies upon, or you can sell it for a lot of gold, or you can ask them. You can say, why would your character care about the gauntlet of doom? You get an inspiration if you give me any answer that is reasonably justified.
That's clever.
And as soon as the player is forced to confront that question and go, why is my character? What possible reason could I? Well, I'm a wizard, and I know I would be able to study that gauntlet and learn so much about the arcane. Oh, I'm a barbarian. I can wield the gauntlet. All of a sudden, you just start going through it. That is a very quick shortcut, and I do it at the beginning of all of my convention one-shots, is here's the thing that you care about. Go and care about the thing. Why do you care about the thing? And they'll immediately dive into the deep end of the pool. That's an easy way to do that.
Great advice. Mike.
I would follow the general principles of narrative and follow show, don't tell. And focus on not like lore dumping. I think one of the big things that one of the common questions that we've gotten, or things that I've seen of like, well, gosh, people don't care about the lore or all of this work that I put into the setting, and it's because if you're more excited to show off cool things that you thought of than you are to have your players enjoy a story, they will not care about it. And so it's basically putting the cart before the horse, where make sure that you are putting first an actual narrative and a story that the players are putting through, and it's all show, don't tell. And I think, Derek said, the horrible goblins, show the NPC the horrible effects of the goblins before, show the players what that is. Don't tell them. Don't be like, oh, wanted 500 gold pieces because they done all terrible things to the Johnson farmstead. Show the done terrible things they did to the Johnson farmstead. Obviously within reason for all your party's comfort level. But make sure, unless it's a group that's they're fine with a quest board, right? But basically, if it's a party that cares about narrative, make sure that the narrative is what is drawing them forward, and then it's a compelling reason, and really lean on the show, don't tell.
I have a great example. Speaking of terrible, horrible goblins, and again, it's a very graphic and violent way they did this. But if you've seen the anime Goblin Slayer...
Oh, no! Why?
One of the things that was so effective is they fucking start that show and they immediately show you just how fucking evil and vicious and violent and terrible these goblins are.
Yeah.
And that immediately contextualizes the whole fucking story. And it's not like, oh, we're just little goblins trying to make our way in the universe, right? You get why this guy is named Goblin Slayer, and his whole thing is slaying goblins. So find, and again, it's super graphic and it's not for everyone, but find ways where you can really kind of highlight the threat. And then I also have another thing to add, and I know I'm not a DM, but I'm asking permission if I can add my
as a player, knowing when you felt hooked is exactly the kind of input that has to go both ways.
For me, the way that I see it is that when you are sitting at a table playing Dungeons and Dragons and you are a party of heroes, there is a necessary conceit that comes with, we are adventurers and we are going to play through the story, right? Mm-hmm. I sort of famously at this point poked a hornet's nest on a previous episode, and then at our panel that we did at Gen Con, where I said that backstory doesn't matter. And I stand by that to a degree, even after character creation, in some ways, where it doesn't matter at all for creating the character itself. But I think that a lot of people get so wrapped up in their 14-page backstory or their 30-page backstory, where it's like, oh, we did the very first mission, but like, why am I even here in this group? My whole family was kidnapped by bandits. What's keeping me as part of this adventuring party? I should be going and looking for them. And then all of a sudden the DM's like, well, fuck, I gotta like constantly tie in this group of bandits that like fucking kidnapped their family just to keep this one player invested. And it's like, dude, like, you know, you're playing D&D, you are a member of a band of adventurers, you can't constantly be thinking about, well, I need to go resolve my backstory. It's an unfair position to put the DM in, to have to force them to constantly tie in your backstory to every single thing that the party does, or else they want to leave.
So I think you're 100% right. That is a common pitfall, which is something that we will talk about on the next episode, for sure, that people fall into. And I think that I think it's probably more common than we realize, right? But I would say the flip side of that is not to just automatically assume like backstory doesn't matter. It's that's why we make it a collaborative process, because not a single person here on this panel would ever let that happen, right? We would all go, that's ridiculous, that's bad storytelling, it's bad character creation, it doesn't fucking work, and you're not gonna fucking do it. Whereas when we come up with our backstories, all they do is enrich the character creation process that we've already completed, right? And it narratively makes sense, and it ends up being good narrative when applicable to the story. Whereas, like you said, it does nothing but detract and take away and become a source of distraction.
Right. And when I say that, it's context sensitive, right? Like it's very context sensitive, where the, you know, when I say it doesn't matter outside of your own character. Where backstory really matters is for yourself. It's for your own ammo, and it gives you the context of how would this character, and not Richie, or not whoever you are as an individual, how would you do things? It just gives you extra ammo to pull on, or to sort of, it gives you more arrows in your quiver to roleplay the character. But don't feel like you constantly have to be driven and motivated by events in your 30-page backstory, and especially if your DM is new, it's just really it's undue pressure on them, I think.
Wait, you said that?
This is a really go ahead.
At Gen Con?
Yes.
Holy fuck, you mad lad!
Well, no, because
you crazy bastard! Right? What the fuck?
No,
what happened? I need a download.
Everybody was in agreement. It was awesome. Because the idea what we're talking about here is that the panel was originally, and people forget this, the panel was not the character creation of the Avantris character creation process. The panel was creating realistic people in a fantasy world, right? And that's exactly what Rich is talking about. The backstory is for you. It's not an undue burden for your DM and their narrative. The backstory is for you to pull ammo and do this thing. And it doesn't matter for the character creation process. It comes way after. And sometimes it doesn't even come after, right? So anyway, yes, we wish you had been there, Mike. And but I want to look at this pinned comment.
I was busy unleashing heck upon Sandusky, Ohio.
That's right. So
Shiloh
said, the way the energy in the room immediately changed when he said that at Gen Con was amazing. Yes. So here's the thing. I think that if you had not said this before, and this was the first time that you were dropping this red hot atomic bomb, it would have been even more devastating. But we had previously talked about it on Neon Nights,
right? So
anybody who was there and knew us and was a fan of us was ready for it. But the people who were not were just as shocked as those same people watching that episode of Neon Nights.
I'm too much of a coward. I never would have fucking had that hot.
No, as soon as Rich said it, when we were, I think it was on Neon Nights.
Yeah.
When you first,
yes.
Yep.
As soon as you said it, I was a defender for life. It makes sense. It is necessary. It is necessary that we don't know your backstory in order for us to know your character.
Well, that's why it's the last.
Have to be able. You have to be able to be a character without it.
It's the last step of the process, if even that, right? And that's why I think it, it backs up what Rich is saying, 100%.
I actually want to give shout out to Ginny D, who, this is shocking that this perfect apropos, where she put out a tweet or something of a video of this exact topic. Of basically where she says it's not your GM's responsibility for your character to care. Yes. It's your responsibility.
It's
so
collaborative
go check it
storytelling
out.
for
I
a
mean,
reason.
he literally posted it today.
Oh, wow.
So super
I'll check that out.
relevant.
Are we still vamping on the question just like
So
the one shot, or
also
is
that
this-
gives me I have a couple of points that I'd like to make, and yes,
Yeah.
we can continue to vamp on this question. Number one is that we are 12 VIPs away from the double reveal.
12.
We're so close.
We are so
We have-
close from
We have
2600.
57 minutes to get 12 VIPs.
57.
In order to get
Tonight.
a double reveal in the VIP Discord. So that's number one.
tell your friends?
For those
Call
that are new,
on-
what is a VIP? What?
Call on Karen.
All right, so time out.
What are we even
Let's,
talking
Mike,
about?
yeah, explain again. What's a VIP? Give us the tee up.
A VIP, it costs $1, and you join our VIP program for the Crooked Moon.
What's the Crooked Moon?
The Crooked Moon is our forthcoming Kickstarter campaign. It is a folk horror supplement for 5th edition, and it's going to be awesome. There's tons of add-ons, full tarot deck, bunch of boss minis, plushies, bunch of fucking dice, all sorts of awesome shit. And a VIP gets access where if you back us at any tier, basically you immediately get access to the VIP Discord, amazing conversations, lots of VIP sneak peeks, and you also will unlock the sneak peeks of our Kickstarter page when that's available, and then you'll also be the first to know. That's $1 immediately. Then, if you back us at any tier, you will get a full Honk Legion mini expansion to the Crooked Moon, and then if you back at any physical tier, you will get a beautiful Chuckles enamel pin.
It looks
And
great.
dude,
Did you say Chuckles?
It's fucking Chuckles, dude. Oh my, I've become a moon-shaped pin. And
God.
and I did say that, Rich. Exactly right. Exactly right, producer Rex. Dude. So it's awesome. And so it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of fun shit. And that's basically how we can prepare. Basically, it much better equips us to have a successful launch and to know, basically have a good sense going into early October, going into the campaign, so that we are just we're much better positioned. So it helps us out a ton as well. So we're going to do a huge reveal.
You may have mentioned this as well, but part of the perks is the VIP Discord, and we have been dropping regular sneak peeks of art in there. And Mike has promised that if we hit our goal of 2,600 before midnight tonight, that we'll get a double reveal, because we already dropped. He dropped an amazing piece of art earlier today, and he wants to drop another one. So come on. Well teed up. Basically, what I wanted to say before we close out with final thoughts, which take our time. We got time. This is not a rush to end things. But basically, I put together this episode idea in a haste, because it's just been a crazy everything, and every day has been a mad dash. And we basically only covered the first third of what I wanted to talk about. We talked about conversations with your players as kind of like a prerequisite step before you ever get to party composition, before you get to working on your campaign in your session 0, before you ever sit down for session 1 to roll a single die. So we are absolutely doing I'm making the executive decision where we're doing a part 2 next week.
You have decision rights.
We have so much more to talk about. And then we're also going to talk about common tricks, common pitfalls, and tips and tricks, because I am sure that our DMs have amassed an unbelievable amount of knowledge. And maybe no promises, but maybe we can talk to Nikki and see if she'll pop in for a little bit next week and give her opinion on some stuff. Again, no promises, but we'll see what we can do.
That'd be great.
So what I would say is, Derek, whether you wanted to continue to vamp on the final question, or if you wanted to just kind of give your final thoughts on at least what we've discussed thus far, with aligning values and talking about and matching enthusiasm, and talking about scheduling and setting expectations and level setting, right? Any of that is fair game, and then we're going to get back to it next week, same time, same place.
Okay. Well, I'll hold on the larger DM beginner thoughts that I have for next week very much. I think, to recap, what I think has been in the general center of most of my responses to the questions from you, Andy, which have been terrific, and from the audience, don't waste your time. Don't waste other people's time. Communication has a lot to do with that. The understanding and alignment of the game, how to prioritize Dungeons and Dragons as something that you want to do. Time is a hugely important tool as a player and as a DM. And if I have an opportunity next week, I'll talk about how valuable it can be to the story, because that is one of the cheap tricks that I'm happy to share that will allow you to tell the story of your dreams very much. I truly believe that a DM's ability to manipulate time in the world is one of their biggest assets, and it goes unspoken too often. I'm happy to unpack that more next week.
What I'll say is that it may seem like we didn't give a lot of actionable advice.
We're gonna get there.
But
I think we did. I totally.
I think
Well,
we did. I think we
we
did.
did,
But
we're gonna
what
get
I'm-
more into it.
I'm trying to break down as someone who loves philosophy, right? This is not just for DMing. This is for just general life. That this was the primer. This was the primer. In order to, you always need to start with your fundamentals. You need to start with the fundamentals. You need to start with your baseline philosophy.
Defining your terms.
Defining
So you're
your
already hitting
terms
what I
in
want to
order-
talk about next week.
Exactly. You need to basically set the foundation in order to build your value hierarchy upon, and then build all the tactics, right? The actual tactics and tips and tricks, that's the last piece that goes in the puzzle, right? And so was basically been a philosophical foundation of how to approach starting to DM, which gets into the sociology of D&D and running a game and friendships and relationships. And you can apply a lot of this. I'm not good telling you what to do in your life, but you can apply a lot of this to not just D&D, but kind of any hobby, passion, vocation, whatever it is in your life. So stay tuned, but I feel like, just kind of understand that this is the primer to then we can apply our little paints on our little gray men.
The next time someone asks you to do a chore, clean the dishes, do the laundry, make a sandwich, whatever they're asking you to do, ask them to roll a persuasion check, because all of what we've talked about applies in real life.
Rich, final thoughts, and then I've got a question for you.
I have two final thoughts that are basically related. One is just a sort of level set again, that your mileage may vary for any of this. There is no wrong fun. There's a lot of different ways to play D&D. We play a very specific style of D&D, and all of this advice is related to our style of how we play D&D. But the second thing I think someone mentioned, I saw that you all did this On a Silver Strand, maybe they had meant Stardust Rhapsody, and it really worked there, and I took notes. And I think it's a really interesting comment, and it made me sort of think or realize,
Didn't see that.
hopefully a lot of this advice that we are saying not only rings true, but hopefully you can watch our actual content and see it put to
rings
test.
true.
Because if you look at a lot of other channels and content creators, there are a lot of folks that are giving advice on how to DM and how to be a player and how to D&D, but you can't really watch them play a lot of D&D, and there are a lot of folks that play a lot of D&D, but they're not really spending a whole lot of time talking about how to play D&D and their philosophy on it and how to DM and stuff like that. So what I love about these, weekly sessions is that we're kind of covering off on both. Is like, we have this philosophy of how we do it. We're talking about what that philosophy is. We're talking about why that philosophy is. And then hopefully we have literally thousands of hours of content where you can see it put into practice.
The proof is in the pudding.
That's well said.
So yeah,
Delicious pudding.
And if what we're saying does not resonate with how you want to play D&D or what you want to get out of it, that's totally fine. Do not listen to a bunch of long-haired fucks and Derek. Fuck what we have to say. It's your own life. You are the master of your own destiny.
And who are
Mikey, I have hair as long as you. It's just
Stop.
I knew, I was setting you up for that. I knew that was fucking coming.
Okay, final question. Rich,
Yeah.
what is your most favorite thing you've ever cooked?
Oh, cooked period?
Oh, I know.
Yeah. What's your? It doesn't have to be in a singular instance. It can be a category of thing that you've done many times and you've perfected it. But what is your most favorite thing that you've cooked?
I have a lot of low-hanging fruit, but I'm gonna go with a bit of a weird one. One Christmas, I cooked the entire menu was like a Victorian Dickensian Christmas supper. So I roasted a goose, I did figgy pudding, I did oyster stew, I did some of your classic like Sunday roast elements.
Was that not the the Yule you did the Wellington?
No, that's different.
Because that was so god tier. Okay, that's different.
I'm a big fan of Wellington too, but like that's a little more kind of cliche these days. Like for me, I went full blown like 1860s to 1890s. That was many years ago now, but that was really fun to sort of try to. I love doing research, and so when I cook, I try to do like super accurate to how it was made at one point in time, and so that was really fun. That's my answer.
Well answered.
We should have a cooking something. We gotta have a cooking something.
We can do a cooking neon nights or even just a cooking straight up cooking stream. I mean, honestly, we'll
Let's
get
go.
there.
Once the four of us are all full time, we can do a lot more of this shit.
We'll probably do both, honestly. The reason I asked that question is because I haven't eaten dinner and I'm going to go cook myself. It's not going to be beef Wellington. It's not going to be roasted goose. But I just wanted to dream. I wanted to dream.
Yeah.
So thank you for answering that question. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I hope that for part one of First Time DMing Survival Guide, you got a lot out of this. Hopefully there's stuff that you can apply to your own game. Don't forget to check out our merch shop, become a patron on Patreon, and of course, as always, check out thecrookedmoon.com, become a VIP today, because we are about to serve up the hottest folk horror supplement that the world has ever seen. And you do not want to miss it.
We are 7 away.
What?
7
We
away.
are so close. Can we get 7 VIPs in 45 minutes, folks?
Yeah, thanks to Derek Hudson's quote here. It says, number 5, and you can quote me on this, we're just built different, Andy. And I said that I think last week. So that's a perfect quote. So thank you, Derek, for quoting that one. And
I didn't pull it up. I pulled it randomly. You just got.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Thank you for doing that. It was a perfect poll.
I feel like you should be thanking the universe.
No,
all I did was ask the universe.
No, you channeled the universal energy and you somehow pulled that quote out. Even Anyway, final thoughts, gentlemen. Otherwise, we're gonna kick it over.
I've got so much more to say. I'm so ready for next week. I will see you on Wednesday, and I cannot wait for next week.
Well, depending on how hard you guys prep, this could turn into a 3-parter, so we'll see.
We're 5 away.
If you get Nikki in here, it's going to be a 12-parter.
That's fine.
5
That's
away.
good.
I have one final thought.
Please.
The older you get, the more you like soup.
Huh. That's really interesting.
Can I ban that? I think I might ban that sentence.
That's really interesting. Do you think that's true, Mikey?
It's definitely true. Anyway,
my
thank you,
final
everybody.
thought is
Rich, go ahead.
It feels good to say, though, right, Mike?
It really does. I just wanted to see how it felt. I wanted to try it. I wanted to experiment. So I've done it. I can just check it off the list.
my final thought is watch Prime. And not just
Watch
because
Prime.
there's an aggressive Prime counter going in chat, because almost nobody's seen it, but I think you can watch us learn our lessons.
Watch us suck.
Yeah.
You can
Yes.
sort of
Watch us
see
fucking
us
suck.
from the very beginning. And if you watch Prime, I still think the story's great. I think that
is great.
it's still solid content that I stand by. Our production quality really sucks at the beginning, but if you want to watch us slowly grow as D&D players and as content creators, it's the only place to do it. Anyway, Prime.
I've got a story about Prime that I'm saving for next week. A story we can all talk about. So that's your plot hook to come back and check it out next week. Thank you guys. We love you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the support. And we'll be back next Monday, same time, same place, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, right here on YouTube.
5 away.
And I think that's all I have to say. Have a good one.
Good night, everybody.
Goodbye.
Good night.